见，是故空中无色无受想行识，无眼耳鼻舌身意，无色声香味触法，无眼界，乃至无意识界，无明亦无明尽，乃至无老死亦无老死尽，无苦集灭道，无智亦无得，亦无所得故，菩提萨埵依般若波罗蜜多故，心无挂碍，无挂碍故，无有恐怖，远离颠倒梦想，究竟涅槃。三世诸佛依般若波罗蜜多故，得阿耨多罗三藐三菩提。故知般若波罗蜜多是大神咒，是大明咒，是无上咒，是无等等咒，能除一切苦，真实不虚。故说般若波罗蜜多咒，即说咒曰：揭谛揭谛，波罗揭谛，波罗僧揭谛，菩提萨婆诃。
我听不到你们的声音呢。
听不到吗？
现在可以了，现在可以了。我萨西必须修行弥陀常是这灵性经典经吧。上界心多弥陀比我言，这个能大心老学不二修，今晚进步这一年生前等于特姐姐给我希望上。确定自己修就是其应当故作是那么着拉汉的呀，大呀没。当节就当做就能了，想就把多的呢就做去，大概区区几位从那建筑了，并且建筑不是就当节就当做就能了，想就把多的呢就做，大概区区几位从那建筑了，并且上建筑不是就建筑不修，我们来给他们因为这个的每个，而且给的大概就是都。现在高的就是王八酱是，视频有点歪的，弟弟，巴尔的都就掐的是不是的？卷面的这个多，
Remember she said the image is slightly skewed, but it's okay.
他这个，在今年卡上我说，刚得的，卡斯沃的，没啥，什么出业的，什么马基吧的，最近做康了的呢，用个月吧的过了我就虚吧是吧？在其他的，地里下卡斯沃的，像家其实今年上当不赢呢，的差不多，什么？叔叔让你给什么的出不赢呢？让你什么出不的基本差不多叔叔了。叔叔让你给什么的马出不的，希望就越不赢呢？让了对的，你怎么的长嘛？但希望当告诉我出点面吧，我等你掐的多。现在叔叔的心对我赢呢，但几点堂前对我的，让了对的几点堂前对我的基本上我掐的过了。现在我地图呢，你看，它是起的，是定时无掐的多。
Yesterday, Rinpoche talked about the causes for our mind being disturbed, being disrupted, or the causes of unhappiness. Rinpoche discussed briefly, like, what is the main cause? And if we consider what is the main cause in that context, well, if we think about the causes for being unhappy and so forth, well, in a more extensive way, well, when our mind is disturbed, when we're upset, then the whole world seems to be disrupted, seems to be disturbed. So from our perspective, when things go wrong, everything seems to be wrong with the whole world. While if everything is going well, we're at peace, then the whole world seems to be at peace with regard to our mind.
수수 내가 제서 딜라 내가 집에 거라 년쇼로 다 가서 그래 프레시라 그래 야리 요 년쇼 시부지도 상다 내가 주디 간라 쿠행알라 지라금도 쿠행알라 지라금도 상상 배 가서 그래 가서 갈라 도와사디에다 미신다기 미지기 상주시니서 상주시니 미카시실레 손나 미탕제기 수술의 상주시기면 상상수르지 진짜기 센나로를 뇌쇼레데 디 다 생이 나로를 다 미탕제기 수술의 지르면 상상 센나로 시부지 강해수르지 세버만 내디지 순르 진짜기 배 뇌쇼레데 디 조디 수술 센디 파 뇌쇼 매버지당 혈려지 바수마도 레마도 신다기 가서 그래 기초당 미신다기 수수의 뇌쇼지유당 수수의 수수의 뇌쇼지유 이 세부차고도 오늘 제외는 자샤 구주구구 수수의 뇌쇼지고 얼마도 기초기 뇌쇼기 지고 말 오늘 단에 제외나.
Therefore, if our mind changes, then from our perspective, the whole world changes, everything changes. Now, in the modern world, there's a sense that we experience a lot of pressure. We feel oftentimes very much pressured. So this person says such and such, the other person says something else. And it seems that there are problems everywhere, that there's pressure from all sides, that everyone seems to pressure me. Sometimes we get that kind of sense in terms of what other people say and so forth. So it seems like something is really pressing down on our mind, this kind of sense that there are other people that give us this pressure by pressing down on us. But actually, it's mainly our own mind. So feeling pressured doesn't really come from others. It doesn't really come from society, but it mainly comes from our own mind. So it may seem to us that it comes from someone else, from other people, but pressure is really something that is created in our own mind. So it's mainly, well, Rinpoche says 99% comes from our own mind, feeling pressured, feeling the pressure from society. It doesn't really come from others. It doesn't come from society. It has been created by our own mind.
다 뭐에 줄라 수수기 내가 강 제투바디 다 당분이 제미 투바치 제바이나 다 수수가 수불을 갈래 용그래 상을 갈래 용으로 다 수수 제투바지 수수 제대디 간라 다 디토네 지속이 년수 시부지도 상상이 수수기 내가 르르 제디 제주금에도 지속 지속 나로기 미망부 당 수수기다 레공기 뱀부다 로봇이주 인슈 제도 상상티 수수 생기 제도 상베 제기 천하지레 마도 상동다지레 마도 된 뭐에네줄라 수 인슈 제 퇴지 게요 수 상당다 진지와 있는 생기 나로 다 가르 군주 가르시에 있는 시주 수수기 제구버디니 다다시 제는 두교 후다버다 지규 레던디 제슈 지랑기 레던디 루토버 제슈 시지님 레공기 레가지 제요로디 다다진 침바이나 신다수도 수수용원이 파 가르치에요스나 게무세세 제시네 르르지디 군수 가르치에 마시디 군수랑 가르치는 다레 상상 심벌 르르지 샤샤나 뉴슈 쳐야지 용규어 말 쇼지니 그냥 쇼 신다지네 미송구도 지소진의 대비rin라 레공진의 대비rin라 파주 상주미튼바당 지기지의 시에당 파슈기 추슈의 시에다 추슈기 파슈의 시에 그 춘이래랑 신리 라는 진빈낭도了随便 파신 거를 딘데시 송요래 안다디 들어서 모르지 디송요래 다 가당베 거기 루주지 송치시네 가당베 기시 평생 까민남베 카토틀로 지지지지지 러기도 지지지지 러기도시 딘데시에긴 용디가나 가당베 기시 수인지 팔렌자디가나 디게지 말레스 밀레시아 미마도요 말레스 미시시 미베스 로 디 가르치기레스 나초 미기 미시에레마도 미기 둥루시에니 요마랑 나초 디 계제시에지 오다리 바주디 쿠두자도 쿠드 파바디 두자도 파기따디 야부면도스디 둥근시 말하다 나초도 시에 요바디 미지브레다 파기 지지지 두스니 시에 요마 사통 말어 세상 밀케시에 미마도니 요 말에다 시에 요바디 쿠시기로 디 kuchuniris kemidos mi shi mi be di xiewe ne kariors da odi sondo xizan di da kasa ngwe ne su ku tinde cha di go ro sang tinde dang ne ping gi do
Of course, it may happen in some situations that there are certain things we can't do. We are unable to do certain jobs, and that may be difficult for us then physically as well as mentally. But with regard to the things that we can do, with regard to the things they can do, so with regard to the things that we can do, well, we can do it in a relaxed way, actually. I mean, there really is no pressure coming from our boss and from our colleagues and so forth. No one can really pressure us. Because in the end, well, it's totally up to us. It's all dependent on our own way of thinking. So it's important to just remain calm. It doesn't matter what others say. In the end, we shouldn't allow ourselves to be pressured. So it's important to be relaxed. It's important to remain calm, no matter what other people say to us. So in that way, it's totally up to us whether we react to other people trying to pressure us. It's absolutely in our own hand whether we allow ourselves to be pressured or not. Also, of course, sometimes when we work in an office, for instance, when we work somewhere, there are disagreements. People don't agree with each other. Everyone has a different opinion, and not everyone is in agreement. But that is just the nature of things. We should be aware that that's just the nature of things. So, for instance, in the Great Lamrim, in Lama Tsongkhapa's Great Lamrim, or the Great Treatise on the Stages of the Path to Enlightenment, there's a story told by, it's in the chapter on patience, and in that story it talks about this Kadampa Geshe, who was being told by someone else that there's so many problems, there's so many disagreements, it's so difficult. And so the Kadampa Geshe, whoever the Kadampa Geshe is, Rinpoche says he's not sure, but that this Kadampa Geshe responded, well, the troublemaker, the people, those who create trouble for us are just humans. It's just human beings. So it's not that bad, actually. It's just humans creating trouble for other humans. So criticizing or disagreeing and so forth. Well, fortunately, it's not cows, for instance. So we never have a sense, oh, these cows have been putting so much pressure on me the whole day, or look at this pig over there, or this horse is such a troublemaker, or this little mouse has been talking the whole time. We don't need to worry about animals. Animals don't create these kind of problems that humans create, in the sense that there's disagreement, people have different views, everyone voices their view, and it may be different to our own view. But the point is, what this Kadampa Geshe said is that, well, it's just humans creating trouble for humans. That's the nature of things. That's reality. And since it's reality, since it's just in the nature of things, it may help to think along these lines, that this is just totally normal, that this is a normal situation. So in that sense, it may be easier for us to deal with problems in the office or problems in our place of work, when there are disagreements, when there are all sorts of different views and so forth.
看看我所学的，张路处地啊当，他那些熊不鸡啊当，马鸡不吃的，长么个早点对下个去过的是，在电影里讲了，对下个看这是，对的，马鸡不当，什么处呀当，熊不当，现了刚也当，那出不用的，的主个早原来面的顶对下个去过的是，但的看这是去过的是，第几十五度，아니 뇌샤디 컨테스트 이거래세 지라 우도 아니 뇌샤디 컨테스트 파 쇼총으로 당고 그래세 근데 할레비 계시 뭐 차고도다
Now, as Rinpoche explained yesterday, well, one of the main causes for depression, for feeling unhappy, being upset, our mind being disrupted, and so forth, well, one of the main causes is attachment. Now, the question that arises is, how does it create problems? So this is an important question. This is what Rinpoche will address today. How does attachment create these disturbing mental states? It is the root of all our problems.
배차샤나 가릴라 차츠마 있는 저기도 배나 수수랑니기 하장기 가부지서기 자라지 요바이나 说 자라 공친부 ren탕친부 수수기 시부 집에 딜라 자친부 지대기 자라지 요바이나 양면의 수수 낭라 다 아마라다 아마기 아마다 발라기 발라다 딘데기 배 가서 그래 메로 고마수기 만두스 진이 지도 유디마 제샤비 친주기 노부딘데 주요이나 아디베 시부지 자신부 지기로 하다 베 시부 자신부지 딜러 시부 신자요 딜러 신자요 바 인디간라 딜러 신자 간데스 요르스로 디간라 생긴 하로르다 다 자라디 도 주샤요라 자라디 나를 도지 강수를 지라 셀기 강수를 자기 강수를 지는 주연도 가오르다 지제는 민신다지 기사 연도 치시 하고 요 다 가는 있는 도지 주요 전에 샤샤요 생긴 나로라 가든디 르두 말어 생나 디튼 제신이 디시부지 가소를 셀레 개요 자친부 셀레 개요 야부 셀레 개요 핀도요 봐 셀레 개요 ren탕진 인바 수다 차 탄제네 베 리버 순데지 통지지니 데레지 통네 아니 센딜 수네 생기 나로 가디네 디티네 응아솔라다 친주기 노부딘데지 유다 시지니 밀라나라 디센 고 슐로런두네 고 가디네 센디가란 자르지 데디오다 다디 센딜 수디요 인디가 센네 발르 두고 말어 르당 루이 파 땅두고 마 루이 디 센디오다 생기 생디오다 류기 생디오 말다 생기 생디오로 다 디라다 생디를 수데 딘데질은 되자스 거레스다
Likewise, we need to talk about how does attachment
말에 생 수버스나 배는 아주 큰다고지 수부간로 주버이나 야 수두로 디간라 토디 수부간로 주는 나로래 진주로 디나신 생디 잘라디간 수지진이 만자르지진디 다가 생디 잘라디간 자르지진이 자르지기 자르샤베스는지
So these are some of the questions we need to address here. How does attachment serve as the root of all these negative minds? How does attachment arise? And most importantly, how can we reduce it? So all these are extremely important. Now, to give you an example, for instance, if you're attached to something very expensive, to something very valuable, for example, if you have some treasure, some family kind of treasure that has been passed down through your great-grandparents to your grandparents to your parents and so forth. So this extremely valuable treasure, and you're very attached to this. You keep it in a safe. You keep it in a, so Rinpoche said, in this iron box that you actually never really look inside. Maybe it's already gone. You don't even know. But the point is like you can't let go. In your mind, in the back of your mind, there's this treasure and this safe. There's a sense that it's extremely valuable. Actually, the sense of like how precious it is, it goes beyond the actual measure of its preciousness. So we exaggerate the preciousness of this object, or how good it is, or how beneficial it is, how valuable it is. And in our mind, we totally, due to our attachment, we exaggerate all these attributes. And we always think about this treasure. There's this treasure, there's this object. We may even dream about it. Even when we go outside, we constantly think about this treasure. So think of such a case when there's so much attachment, your mind is basically pierced by this. So Rinpoche used this expression, in the Chinese translator asked again about this expression of like a mind being pierced by it. It has this meaning of like not being able to let go, your mind being attached to it like a glue. So in that way, we're not able to let go. This object is seen as so extremely important, as so extremely valuable and beneficial, that we're not able to let go. Our mind is totally obsessed with this particular object. So our mind holds on to this treasure, this object of our attachment, and we are not able to think of anything else. Or in other words, we're totally obsessed over it, going over it again and again, with this object kind of piercing our mind.
다 생딜라 가두이나야 잘 되바 디 가두이나 센나 디 코디도 잘라디 유 생 차서들다 심바 차서기 잘라디 센낭로라 에 가두이나 코디에 줘로 생기 나네 가두이나 마지버치시네 슈바센나 코르 주제지기 나로라에 야네야네 코르지 생기 나로라 베디 차람이 샤디지지니 자니 봐 카체 투고마 다디 생기를 생위디를 수바스 거다 차바스 생위디를 자로와스 어디 다디 차 탄제네 리버스 통화세디 간데스 거스로 디간라 자라디기 자라디센의 코네 자라디를 생차비 거라 디기 연딩기 차마도 로 콜레 코 야부유 자친부인세 장쇼기 차디 코야마도 그기지 가서 그래 야부 멤베쇼다 님베쇼 디수제디 자니 세나라 뇌자기 자니 뇌자기 루디기 장부 멤베차 밀리베 쇼디 자니 통구요 말에 리베 쇼디 지부지 통되기도 디기 차 탄제니 이동은 통세디 된지를 쓰고 왔다.
So what does it mean that our mind is totally pierced by the object? Well, it means it's kind of attached to it, is glued to it, in that we constantly think about the object. It's constantly in our mind. So we're thinking about it at all times. It doesn't matter what we do. We cannot separate our mind from the object, which means we cannot stop thinking about the object. This is what it means that the object, this is what it means, that the object pierces our mind. The object is kind of like glued to our mind. We're attached to it. And when we're attached to a particular object, what happens is that our mind of attachment, so the mind itself, when it's active, when the attachment is active in our mental continuum, then we can only see the positive aspects of that object. We only see the advantages. We only see the positive qualities of this object. We're unable to see anything negative, or this particular mind is unable to see any disadvantage, to see anything negative about this object. So only the excellent aspects, only the good aspects appear, only these are seen, and nothing negative is seen. So in that way, because of our attachment, the object of attachment is seen to be totally positive, as just positives in all ways, and therefore we can't let go.
底下的鱼扛了米呢 jiba inare dan dwecha kurangi ngou di jibareda dadi rang la mi bin dwecha inare pen ama ina susugi pu la mi bin dwecha yedigang la pu di pu di la mi bin dwecha jibi gela da laba den dwecha jibi gela pu di la mi shibu ji be shin dwecha shincha jibi khadu di la pe pu di zambi shu ma do ji ngimbe shu di zan ni 통고 면 dwecha di ro 야외 shu sha da ji ma do mi tong ji di 다 유강을 믿는 되차 집에 있는 양 되차기 되차지 오당 되차지 유통당 지주제의 집어래다.
Now, this type of attachment, it doesn't matter what the object of attachment is. There's no difference. The way the mind perceives this object is always the same. So whether it's attachment towards ourselves or attachment towards our child. So for instance, a mother who's attached to her child. At the time of attachment, when the mind of attachment, or this attached awareness, when the mental vector of attachment is present, when it's active, the mother sees her own child only in a positive way, cannot see anything negative, only sees the positive aspects. So this is true for any object. It's not just true for a mother and her child, but any object of attachment, it's always seen in the same way, in that exaggerated way.
다 인디강라 딘데기 되차 유강라 미년 되차디 로 지웨이나 유간데지를 미베 디다비긴 되차지 예베이나 다 맞추기 센디 위디라 자디오 위디강라 수디오 위디란 자디오다 유디강란 자르지진에 잔이 려투고마 디네수 카트야 두고마다 센디강 수디오다 디绿当面图吧是的，比较难路了。他现在绿当面推的，现在当面推的，我记得现在讲人家的接近的看这嘛推的了，现在他说是现在当面推绿当面图吧是的，绿的怕当面推接近的，都现在跌掉了，或现在就跌掉了。但跌的越被顶这个跌的越不赢呢，但顶这个先查是个越低了，若越低一切图。유디 체도 다 딘제긴 되샤디 같이 치우여 있는데 다 유디 체도 심버 투야다 유디 체도 신제지야다 유디 체도 심버 마지버 용야다 유디 체도 도버침불레 대야다 유디 체도 응안다 용야다 참마다 다 디던디니 용거다 뭐 간데스 다 빼샤버이나
Now then, therefore, well, when we talk about attachment, therefore, when there's an object, it doesn't matter what object it is, well, the moment we're attached to some kind of object, the mind reacts in a way by not being able to let go, being attached to the object, being glued to the object, being pierced by the object, being unable to separate from it mentally. So in that way, we say the mind can't let go, not being able to let go, to take the object to mind, to obsess over it. Now we're holding on to the object because of the attachment. And because of this attachment for this particular object, well, our mind gets upset, our mind worries, our mind is unhappy, our mind grows suspicious, our mind is fearful. So all these negative states of mind, such as feeling upset, being worried, and so forth, they all arise in relation to the object that the mind can't let go. So Rinpoche will give another example, with regard to this explanation he just gave.
수수기 심버디 다 가까이 있는 저기도 배나 캄바수강 캄바지강의 시우지 센차디 요이나 센 캄보지강라 수수기 생디 시부지 가속으로 봐. 생차지지네 디네츠 카테마 tweet. 가디오는 디 캄보디 센나 코디에지 유베이나 야면의 수수기 생디 수수기 주부인의 주무지 주무인의 주부순이지 야면의 부인의 파마지 파마인의 부지 근데지지네 생디 유디강라 가속으로 차지 유디를 차지 디네츠 짠이 카테마 tweet. 그래서 근데지 유베이나 다 주제你去在西斯拉维那最大的线上路了，它卡这嘛对3年出说三级托你怕绿大嘛推的，先拿了可儿下日节节呢在你怕节头在你节早你们推，顶这级预备够了，但怕是雨滴了，但雨滴开始节用，雨滴没法掐用。雨滴俺了中国当用是雨滴叔叔的袋子马掉技术呢，看是叔叔什么加上地方下掉的，叔叔的生热我厂嘛地方下过的，生加上生给家的嘛说嘛，古下家为呢，家地方的怕数据地方家姐姐呢，生产的地方了，恰是雨滴也你让了，他说让给对吧？那星期。没接巴当，让给对吧嘞？都手机钱用的讲了，当然别，一点看用做别，看说嘞，喇叭那些，一点看托罗那些是中国他故讲来了，我讲了土家那些是，家给那了的要来的，看是来批天立地，看嘞，批天是个嘞土家，
晴天霹
哦
雳，
对，晴天霹雳，先生，被我了土家那些，但。今天一杯，你利用这个按三个站你的三个站你的截图嘛，三哪个站你胸也买不起来，三个站你水也没推起来，看的是老地方了，叔叔的三的被家当不地方了，数据新价钱呢，什么地方了数掉了，他可装不赢的，我别的这个上说的些呢，三恰上地方了，下你的地方了，三下三个三恰三个余地，让给对吧？那些没接不当。让人对不了多的结巴当，阳明的别卡是过来，生恰是一个余地，就没把恰不了说不当，但他们的呢，到底你我这边巨人给拿落了，年最忙不远有，是吧？年最听不当，没听不当，该来考不忙不远有，因为讲了，他那边给这些当春节给多年，卡说过来。上次听没听忙不远有了，就是等待用别卡多了，卡对那边先出去。看是呢，身体讲西部去下杂了，他被西部去被移动也不带起，他说家长被西部去被打不通呢，身体讲的蔬菜的讲了。
So, for instance, we're very attached to a house. If we have attachment towards our own house, well, again, we're not able to let go. We always think about this particular house. We always think about it. It pierces our mind, just as explained before. Or it could be other objects. It could be, for instance, a friend in the case of a woman, so having a male friend, or in the case of a man having a female friend, so having attachment towards each other, or parents having attachment towards their children towards their parents. So in those cases, we're not able to let go. Our mind is not able to let go of this object. So possibly for 24 hours, we're obsessing over this object of attachment. The mind is not able to let go. It constantly thinks about the object. And so at that time, what happens is that we're also constantly worried. There's a sense of foreboding that something may happen to the object. What is the object doing? What happens if I lose it? What happens if it deceives me? So in that way, our well-being very much depends on the object. If we're constantly worried about this object, well, it upsets our mind depending on what is going on. So it's like if we're 100%, we're just obsessed with this object. It's 100%. Our mind is glued to the object, so that we then, because of the not being able to let go, we then want this object to act according to our own wishes, to do what we want. And if things don't work the way we want, if the object doesn't act the way, or if our wishes are not fulfilled with regard to this object, then it seems the whole world goes down. And there's probably also this expression which is said in Chinese, that it seems as if lightning hits your head. So Rinpoche said it in Tibetan, but there's also a Chinese expression that when the object of attachment, when things don't go the way we want them to go, it feels like our head is hit by lightning. And we cannot bear it. We cannot bear that things don't go the way we want them to go, because we're so attached, because we're so glued to the object. So if things don't go the way we want them to, we start to worry. We get really worried. So sometimes things go according to our wishes, sometimes they don't go according to our wishes. But if they don't, then our mind is greatly disturbed. Our mind feels very disturbed. Our mind feels upset. It worries. We're unhappy, and it's not able to remain in a peaceful state. And that's all because of our attachment, because of being attached to a particular object.
디 세상 디도 상당디간라 칸더 유딜미비 신자 다신의 류당망토예디 가주 치유유의나 디최지 디단지네 신체당 심바마지바당 도바당 디수디 디최지 친부연유버지 뭐 가두인의 그 용액이 네가 유디버지 다 딜러미빈 되샤 가수 쇼총바이너리 디최지 유디 이체도 유디단 지네 신체당 신도당 마지바 용액이 총유되지 다 게시 로 센딜의 수디의 자원에 센딜의 차바디 자원이 매바이나 유딜의 신자제대디 유딜의 신차바디 잔이 매나 센디간의 차대디 센디간의 자르대디 디간의 자르지네 센 유디간의 쇼르에죠라 심바 쇼르스그로 심바 유디간의 쇼르에다 심바 유디간의 수지 자르지네 생지 동메도 류동메도데 개매바이나 다자라디 라나라 쇼노쇼르 도나도 로 미쿠누쿠르 가르치는지 지제셔니제 알레 세지마도 개구치 디 용구면도 왔다 디 세부 차으면도 디 응엘로 디 딘주당디 수수세나 딘레지레샤 상상지 딘주당디 지 세부지 차고 그러면
Now, if we think about this, if we think about attachment, how attachment works and how it affects our mind, well, this kind of attitude that is not able to let go of an object, well, the greater the attachment, the greater becomes our worry, our unhappiness, our suspicion, our fear, all in relation to that object. So the measure of our attachment determines how worried we are, how unhappy we are, how suspicious we are, and so forth. So it's at all times, as long as we're attached, these negative states of mind are very like, the danger for them to arise is ever present. On the other hand, if our attachment grows weaker, if we are able to reduce our attachment, well, to the same measure that we can reduce our attachment, our worry, our unhappiness, our suspicion, our fear, all these are, they all are likewise reduced. And if you think about it, if there's no attachment at all, if we have no attachment, if we're no longer glued to an object, if we're no longer obsessed with an object, if our mind is not always, it's always busy with this object, if we're able to let go, if this glue is gone, well, then even if the object is lost, even if the object of our attachment is lost, or it's destroyed, it breaks down, or it's stolen, well, in that moment, because there's no attachment, there's no problem. We feel okay with it. We may just
解释我做生起囊了，但鱼看了样，这个新家绿档没对新家里面不一呢，看这进不一那样绿档吐下去，不绿档吐不去，绿档吐不谁的鱼看了样生的鱼的讲了树呢，鱼的讲了家儿姐姐呢，看对的生了壳儿的姐姐呢，生的鱼的鱼的来。 是吧？与今年就看这拖下的，看这马拖下的明白些，看这拖下些，是吧？看这马拖下明白。看对那先与的讲了，扩儿的与的先那了扩儿的这些年，你看这马拖下去，的明白，是吧？看这拖下去的，先给的绿先的东拖下，绿东拖下去有不一呢？ 但现在永远记没多，现在永远西藏嘛拉巴的，新不忙记不？但我做看新了的，当不了的绿了点被东西的趴下，绿嘛因吧，那么多不涨了点呢，一涨了点呢，现在嘛记不用的长嘛，他今年金钱多的，他买不起，他生活呢长那个实习那些，哪个那些家庭不恰用过的，卡的钱呢先出也买的不恰用过，这的你这个的了。 고노 쇼야기 닌가 지오레 다 생기 참만 류당 토바스는 니강라 로 생디 유디라 차지니 생디 유디라 미차바 생지 나도 유디 가두이는 코르지지네 하 가서 그래 같이 생기 나도 코르지지네 파 카체마도 생디 가는 자네 카체마도 해줘 디마인바 카체 토야지 중바이나 다 绿党土巴是个了，但第绿党土巴是老地方，绿党是老地方了，可别第几年开始过来，国现在就估计今年，但可今年送的苦了，东南山的马迹，苦党开始过来，绿党是老地方了，别的别南面党起今年，看苦我不得早呢，我也买不起，人是低贵去。 생기 류당 그랬어요. 류동 단지 류동 그랬어 어디가라 류동 어디가 오무부디 짠이 왜요 말이 세지 고구지니 왜요 말이 세나 류동 세니부디 고지벌 렌지지니 다디 고로바 딜레 레이도 다디 닌가 딜이다.
So if the object then is gone, well, we're totally fine with it. We don't feel that.
Listen.
绿党古的加拉的古巴样有的是，绿党古的加拉的没古巴样有的是，但是现在古没古些当绿党古些你不的全大卡卡的，干啥？全大卡卡的是当这个都。
Now, therefore, if the object is gone, well, all our problems are basically gone. We no longer worried. We no longer worry about anything, and we're free from that. We're free from any kind of worry and so forth. So that's very clear if we think about it. If we are able to let go, so if we're not not in a state where we're unable to let go, if we're not in a state where we're attached, when the attachment is gone, when our mind is no longer glued to the object, when our mind no longer mentally circles around the object, which is just another way of saying is constantly obsessing about it, thinking about the object, when we no longer feel as if we're unable to be separate from the object, if we no longer feel I can't be without the object. So at that time, if we can really let go, there's no worry, because the foundation, which is attachment, well, that's gone. So not to mention the problems like physical problems. When we have physical problems, when there's no attachment, that there's no kind of sense that there's a problem, but also from a mental point of view. On a physical point of view, this is easily understood, but on from a mental point of view, from the point of view of our mental consciousness, well, if there's no longer any attachment, then all worries, all upsetness, etc., it all falls away, and our mind becomes very spacious. However, there's a danger that this is misunderstood. This state of being able to let go, this state of being completely free of attachment, that can be misunderstood in the sense that some people feel if I'm not attached to an object, if I'm no longer mentally obsessing over this object, if I'm able to let go, then I will become indifferent. I'll become indifferent. I no longer care about the objects that I was previously attached to. I may even ignore them. Or I have a sense that I don't need them. Now that's a misunderstanding. So being able to let go of everything doesn't mean I don't need these things any longer. So if it's other people, whether it's objects and so forth, letting go of my attachment doesn't mean that I don't need them. So there's a danger of misunderstanding that. And the Chinese translator again checked again whether this is what Rinpoche meant, and Rinpoche explained it again. Here we're saying, yes, we need to let go of attachment, but even if we let go of attachment, that doesn't mean that the object of attachment, that we don't need this object. So we can still need it in certain way. In certain ways, we may still need it.
律动过的写的，有的了，生，是吧？有的叔叔了，托那样人，马托那样人，卡对那样，生有的讲了，伢儿姐姐呢带着了，是吧？卡对那我不第一，别，里边恰移动也，恰第几步生了扩点姐姐呢，生有的了，卡对呢第几步讲了，迷入去，第几步讲了。 苏的迷入是也会有啥嘞？迷入去呢，连地古嘛嘞，是那么谈见的没古嘛嘞，是到底。因为我不定俺做了古嘛是呢，到底就我现在的他，我不定俺做了古巴样是个嘞，是吧？古巴样是个嘞，因为古巴因呢样，我不定俺做了古巴因呢，古么个谁的，我不定别家下呢，俺做原定。 俺说老兄结果了，原定俺说了果了，你叔叔被他说的压都当果了，定俺说果了，那大那先给团结地处这点，个有些长不是那为那里，但现在的团结是那果了呗，地处这点俺说果了，主不样果了，主么样果了，怕嘛果了，怕嘛了不果了，的果了，果了的果谁的看，果当的看的是呢，的果吧因那样。 地主这的，古巴人呢，是吧？他看的是古国是那叔算吧了，叔算吧人那里看到了，别家下吧人那叔错了，工作这的，特别精洽的话的，叔错了，叔目的呢要接着活下去，是吧？叔错了，可是特别精洽的话嘞，手机呢可是买都没让我说的精洽的话嘞，每次接了。 ku su je de ku tumbe chin cha de ti gu wo ro re di le tang tu ba sla yin di gan la gu be ngo bu di sen ge nang lo la sha yong di gan la cha tang je ne ya wo ji sha ji ne sim ba chang ma di gan la sha ji ne ro sen di la cha ne de di no diores. Kareslo ni gala sen chase gi yudi susu mitsi 다 미치기 이 말에 가서 그래. 미치기 되된 참아 그기 제토야지 말에. 그러. 수수로 구바 참아 생차서 유디지부터네 용 토야지 말에. 마세 생차서 유코랑기 간라양 리베차 샤다마도 밀리베차 매버드네 말에. 님베슈기 차 수수다 메템베 쇼당 다나신기 뉘베 차로 소바당 쥐기 차로 소바 나 소바지 유시버리现在 디인디가라 신신자 지진에 차 탄제니 이동하지를 때는 생기의 수대 디 노디오리스 다 디스고다 오 세부 차선 네 저기다
那谁？那么这刚您说的沉入，我不知道那个是什么中文。沉入，您刚用了一个中文字沉入，心沉入，
我没有
迷入是什么？
说沉入，迷入，
哦，迷入是什么？
入迷这个，
入迷，那谁？那谁？
Well, now about letting go. Well, letting go when it comes to letting go of our attachment, well, whether we get the object that we have attachment towards or we don't get the object, our mind is still glued to it. We always obsess about it. But that doesn't mean that we don't need the object. So whether we need it or we don't need it, that's a totally different issue. Letting go is what we're looking at. That's what's important. But needing or not needing, well, for instance, we need certain qualities. We need good qualities. We need an education. We need to work towards improving our own mind and so forth. We need certain conducive conditions when it comes to living our life. We need certain facilities. We need friends, parents, children. But it's important to understand in what way do we need them? In what way do we need them in our life? So they accord with our well-being, they're in accordance with, or they help us to be well, they help our well-being and so forth. So in that way, they're needed. They may even be necessities without which we couldn't live. But here, letting go, what is it that we're supposed to let go? Well, we should let go in the sense we should overcome our attachment, which perceives the object of our attachment as 100% positive, that a mind that is a wrong kind of mind, a mistaken mind in that it exaggerates the positive aspects of the objects of attachment. And there's also a sense that the object of attachment can give us certain satisfaction, that it can fulfill all our wishes, that it can bring us all the happiness we're looking for. And that's unrealistic. So because of this exaggerated qualities that we see in the object, we have an exaggerated sense to what degree this object can actually bring us satisfaction. Also, the sense that there's no negativity, that the object of attachment has no disadvantage, has no fault, cannot in any way harm us. And again, that is unrealistic. So on top of our exaggerated sense of the positive aspects of the object of attachment, we also have a sense that there's nothing negative about it, that there are no faults with this attached mind, or from the perspective of our attached mind, there's no negativity, there's no disadvantage. The object can in no way harm me. So this is therefore what we need to let go of, this unrealistic type of mind that exaggerates in such a way. It's not saying that we should let go of the objects we need, in the sense that we're not saying that there are no longer any objects we depend on or that are important in our life.
뇌차 지디강라 绿藻呢东没推的卡里尔斯呢我那次的没准备绿当没推的第几卡里尔斯呢年当塞不卡里尔斯呢变成俺说预计了先查的讲了先西屋查的卡多的了大概数数的是吧他说先第了西屋去查的有的讲了나중에 시디가라 상상되는 레이디도 부지 유지了我不记了其他生产的说那不的파마를 뉴르 시디가라 아 가르치는 맞은 가지 고교였어 아니 파마기 디 용토에 요만 가서를 디 뉴토야다 디 가서 그래 디수 가서기 렌토야다 디 가서기 디 롱주에 토야기 뉴버스너래다 뉴버스라고 그러다 간데 디 가서 이 다부지어 토야기 뉴버디 가서를 요 말에 루송 땅에 가서도 요 마틴데 딩가 루송 땅에 유엔너에 맨너에 가서 구도세 디 계제 디시에 용도 생시우세 루송 가르 옛날에 맨너에서 디 가서 이 라토에 요마스 라토너에 마토너에 가서도 나도 구유에세지 아니야 디 계제 칸 되용도 딘 되샤기 상당다디 칸이 마 되용 거다 양쇼 신다지네 생차서디 생 차서기 유디 로 생시부지 차서기 유디 나용디가라 자네 원래지 却拿出말했어. 도와지지 뭐는 却루추고 말했어야지. 지지지 아니 다 강에 채원 却강에 채추고 말했어. 가리지 却了가리는 도지 용추고 말했어. 딘데기 상지 당리도 딘데지 구스도지 도디. 디 생내 자네 류당 투매버당 뇌자기 상당다 간대 유버디 북한 되는 거라.
Now, with this attachment, with this type of mind that is unable to let go, well, it is not in accordance with reality. The way it perceives its object, the way it operates, it is not in accordance with reality. So, for instance, if we have great attachment, sometimes a child, for instance, has incredible attachment towards an object, really wants to get a particular object and starts begging its parents, so please buy this to me, get this for me. And at that time, it's the attachment talking, really. I want this, I need this by all means. So they start begging their parents, and their parents may respond. So the child's parents may respond by saying, well, we can't afford this, or we have no means to look after the object. We have no means to accommodate this into our life and so forth. So basically the child keeps begging and keeps saying, it doesn't matter, even if you can't afford it, I need it. If we can't look after it, or well, I need it, I still need it. So that kind of shows that the attachment here, the attachment is talking, basically. It's out of attachment that not only the advantages and so forth of the object are exaggerated, but an unrealistic kind of attitude is adopted. To such a degree that no matter you can't afford it, it doesn't matter you can't afford it, it doesn't matter you can't look after the object, still it needs to be bought. It's almost like saying, you're not allowed to get sick, you're not allowed to do this, you're not allowed to do that, as if you try to control the situation, basically. So it doesn't matter, it's unrealistic, but you have to buy this to me, you're not allowed to not buy this, and so forth. So in that sense, this kind of unrealistic attitude.
계제 시당디 어딘데 줘래. 다 딘데기 류당마 투버디 뇌샤디 유나 다 강에디 용고 강에나 소리. 다 류당 거스는 디간라 자라디 수수라 고기여버 이나레 이나야 류당 투고 그레스. 자라 수수라 고이네야 고이베 자라디 생기 나네 류당 투버지 고그레스. 러디간 가르스 거스는 고이베 자라디 구에디 가서 수수도 핀도 주의인 거래. 핀도디 루투바이나 푸디 구구여 차버래. 이나 핀베 차디 루네. 답변나 아주 사회순의 진행이는 내가 주고 자야 되러. 근데기 핀버스는 그냥 무부 수수기 핀베 차리 루투고로 디두. 다디 루투기여 디장시 디장시 인바 하고니 구바 디장시 인바 통베 토네. 근데기 구여 무부 디양 시제 차네. 미다베랑시 인바 엔다나신기지 둥해이랑시 인바 엔다나신기 자라 디다비 모부디 가수그리 지 디인바 见行给兴旺进是了五位大罗，我不刚刚行大吉，见行大吉的车送的估计买不抢着定的赢吧，大南行给我不的对大多数的拼图入土的入土吧去入起去的地图也买吧，对大多数的拼图入年度地图也买吧，我去年了，그랑 편배 차딜래 양 차카세 유바 양 잘라 디토네 수수로 뇌배 차양 유한 유바 잘라 디토네 구베 무부 디토네 수수로 뇌배 차딘데 유바 디도 창마 통배 토네 다 잘라 쿠랑기 토네 쿠랑기 내다 가르임버디 시베 토네 쿠랑 미다베랑 신자 쿠랑 준두고레 미다바 라베랑 신자 진 라바지의 체수는 군 준두고레 딘 주베 카토딜 생기 나로라 문리 제마 투에 디메바 어다디 제제제 디쿠랑게 랑신 제세치 랑신다 뒨지지네 센주투 상당당데 무비 랑신다 뒨네 상 랑신다 뒨네 다다 냥도 주투에 중바이나 류당바스 그래 다 수수 구베 무부디 수수의 펜베차디 어디 펜베차디 쿠디 루투 그래 제디 디다비 무부디 야 수수 베나 샤로스는지 루부스는 진바이나 루부디 냥도 대시시네 펜베 차디 요로 어디 요리 다이나 루부디 니마지 나오이나 나그래 가레스라디 나베 카톨레 코치 나추고 말세기 세나 미즈베티로 디 류당 미투베 토니 미즈베디 메바지 나그래 나요랑 신레 이 나요 진의 체수는 나그래 개베지 가서다 림베 도스 게넨 드에디 쿠추니레세죠 어디 가리 좀바이나 디 차상 세나 문이 제도이지 차상세나 흉토야지. 다디 류당 투버스는 어딘데지 쓰고다. 전다 딘데지를 구르고.
So these are the problems. These are basically the problems of not being able to let go. Now, the opposite is the mind that is able to let go. That lets go of the attachment, but still uses the object in the sense if it's beneficial, well, it's still used because it may benefit us, it may still be helpful. So to take food, for instance, to let go of our attachment towards the food, but still eat food. We still need to eat food. We still need to fill our belly. There's a purpose for eating food to stay strong and healthy. And on top of that, so letting go of the attached aspect of our mind, but still using the object, utilizing the object, as in the case of food, we should also understand that we should understand its nature. We should understand, for instance, that this particular object that we've now let our mind has, with regard to a particular object, if we got rid of the attachment towards the object, well, that also means we have to understand its actual nature. So that it's in the nature of impermanence, for instance, that it's in the nature of dukkha or dissatisfactory, it has a dissatisfactory nature, it's in the nature of suffering, that has arisen in dependence on causes and conditions, which means it can go out of existence. If the causes and conditions change, if the situation changes, the object can go out of existence. It can benefit us, but it can also harm us. It has negative aspects, it has disadvantages and so forth. And at some point we will be separated from the object. So there are all these different aspects we need to consider. We have to understand its actual nature. We have to understand the actual nature of the object. Also from the point of view of just coarse impermanence. So subtle impermanence means it changes all the time, but coarse impermanence means that an object, an external object, external circumstances may change, and due to those changes, the object may completely change. So from the point of view of this obvious kind of impermanence, well, that's also what we need to understand. In other words, we need to fully understand the nature of the object, let go of our attachment, let go of this kind of mind that is glued to the object, but understand it when it's useful, understand its usefulness, understand its useful aspect, and in that way, then not throw away the object, but still use it in a sensible way. To give you an example of another object that, well, with regard to which we should we should overcome attachment. So a companion, a mate, maybe a roommate. If we're really attached, then there's a sense, then they're not allowed to get sick, because when they get sick, we have a problem. So we don't want them to get sick. But if we have no attachment, if we have a realistic kind of mind, well, then we understand, well, it's normal for a person to get sick. Things don't always remain the same. My roommate may get sick. One day they may get old. It's because of certain causes and conditions that people get sick, that people get old. So it's just in the nature of things.
다 디제디간라 나트 상루디 무에네스의 다다 튠버지 만두어지 무에네스 가르제 시지네 무에네스 신주당딩에 상당네 아니 디실샤네 상동당디 지요 말에 나츠기 나랑게 센낭로 수수기 센낭로는 되바 가르종들이 수수생기 나로라 장와다 니베 나와 가르샤네리 나와디 실샤네 루기요 인디간라 다 무에네스의 미팅베 중제디 이런 제부디 용기어레 무에네스지 중바딩 원리제마토에디 용거레 수수기 나와디 실샤네 루디간 아니 류당마토에디 용거 나오나 가르샤고 버스나 나올라데 되자 지색이 유디 수수 세나 샤용디간라 야부시우 샤용거라 배 야다네고 야부나니 배 야다와 지시부지 샤용 나올 딩데샤 나오실샤니 수수세는 되바 가르레스는 되바디 가른 되바인 되바디 조시 되바디 되벨루디라 가른 나오샤오인 어디시샤 루디간라 나오 참말로디리 하장 태다바 뭔가 나오 마시오 태다고 그래 무에네스도 메템바 야부지 통수는 배 세례게 야부지 바통 누자지 통수는 배 세례게 누자지 바통 바마지 통수는 배 세례게 바마지를 바통으로 누자지 통디가는 수수기 다우 누자지 통디가는 가두 이내 그 누자 장자시 되시신으로 지지지 지금에도 니니니 지금에도 순순 지금 아마 다우디를 배 연den기 차지 매비스는 지 수시하기도 그러 두자 쉬울 수 있니 근데 맞아 나오실을 샤네 게 시고를 가르 통수 수수생나 간대지 통교에 있는 디실을 샤는 조인상 다 류당마토에디 용구요래 간이스 나오딜 체레 개유 무비네 수기 체딜 개유 나수지의 통수지 종상 디실을 샤네 아니 생기 나로라 되샤딜이 거를 나오디 실을 샤네 신바티 진바티 되샤긴 진바티 레디고로 되샤디 나오나신신 진디고래 나오나신신 진디디가는 체레 개유 이동하지 통네 아니 네 시부지 전시 가두이는 조합매부지 딘데기 나오 신바질레디고로 세상 강에 디체디고 상구도 디체디 요레스다
This is why it's so important to understand the nature of phenomena. And in that way, it becomes easier to let go of certain objects, let go of our attachment, and understand their nature. That's what we need to do. We need to think about reality. Reality becomes the basis for our mental states. Therefore, it's so important to first understand how phenomena really exist, and on the basis of that, we can then make adjustments. What usually happens is we're fooled by the appearances. On the basis of what appears to us, we then generate all sorts of unrealistic views, unrealistic emotions, and so forth. In the case of attachment, for instance, well, attachment is fooled by the appearance of, for instance, this great person based on what we want. So it's mainly our mind, the mind that wishes certain things. On that basis, whatever appears to our mind, positive aspects and so forth, the mind then exaggerates these positive aspects. So if we see, for instance, and this is true for most appearances, most of the things that appear to our mind are extreme appearances, and we're fooled by these extreme appearances. So when we see a good person, when we see something, not no person, but something positive, something good, we have an extreme sense that it's completely good, that this is in an exaggerated way, we perceive this to be positive or good. If it's something bad, again, we have an extreme sense, we have an exaggerated sense that this particular object is bad. Or if it's neutral, we have an extreme sense that it's neutral. Taking, for instance, an object that we consider to be negative or bad or undesirable, like an enemy, for instance, there's a sense that this person is just bad. There's nothing positive about them. A person we dislike, we consider to be an enemy, we can't see any positive qualities in them. So this is all based on how things appear to us. Because of this extreme appearance, well, we can't let go. The appearances are extreme, and on that basis, an extreme mind is generated in the form of, for instance, attachment. So our emotions, our negative emotions, such as attachment, they're extreme. They go beyond what's actually there. They exaggerate what is actually there. So our reaction is an extreme reaction in the form of this attachment, and that gives rise to so many problems.
되차디 간데스 용거를 슬로디간라 되차 용야기 주조디 단 되차 지제기 주조 주면다 망부 요추거래 단 되차 용야기 주조디 지디 디송거다 뭐에 주다 미투미 추미이제기 낭도디 다 추미이제기 낭도디 가스 거스나 다 다기라나 신고부지 통용디 간라 ngobu디 통의 거수 유지 통용디 간라 유디 셀레 개유 수술의 핀도유 되바 셀레 개유 니지모 셀레 개유 야부 셀레 개유 가서 연대진 다나신기지 셀레 개유지 게다진 근데베 뭐에 주기 셀레 개유 낭수죠 수미지 낭 가서 낭수유베 뭐에 주다면 팀비 수미지 낭도죠라 어디 되자 지지기 주 조지 송교레스 안티 간라다야 되자지 라니긴 되자지에 주신다지디 유디이 유디 존나 유디랑라지 가서 핀도여 봐 유디랑라 핀도여베 핀도여롱 이인바 양나 핀도여 봐 진대지 통해야지 랑라 핀도여 봐 통해지리다 뭐 라니기디 셀레게 야부진도 통해지 낭수디지 디츠미지기 낭도기 낭수지리 디가니 모부디 오 나라베 랑라 셀레게 핀도유사레시 랑니라 셀레게 핀도주유사레 상비 다 랑단 지구워다 랑니 딜미빈 되자지월라 랑니라 모부디 이 셀레게 핀도유바 통화 자라디 중베이네 랑라베 셀레게 야부지 용사레 상상기 딘데기 추미지기 낭도지야 고교하다 디디다 루디 디당야는 디다지 차순 버스리 보다 디 뇌자지 얘기 주조지리다 유르스 거다 유르
Now, what is the main cause? What is the main cause of attachment, of not being able to let go? This is the next aspect that is important. So what is it that mainly gives rise to attachment? Well, the main cause is an exaggerated state of mind, a mind that exaggerates, basically, an exaggerating mind or an exaggerating attitude, which perceives a particular object and then exaggerates its positive qualities. It perceives the object in such a way that it seems extremely good, or to have extremely positive qualities, to be extremely beautiful, to be extremely popular, and so forth. Now, from the point of view of this exaggerating attitude, this mind is also literally it translates into English as the inappropriate attitude, but it basically, what it does is it exaggerates the positive qualities of an object. It goes beyond what's actually there. So the actual measure of being positive, being good, and so forth, that is exaggerated by this particular mind. That is one cause. Another cause, and this is also still part of the exaggerating attitude, is that it exaggerates the personal benefit we reap from this object. Now, it's not just that the object in itself is seen in an exaggerated way, but now the connection between the object and ourself needs to be made. A sense that this object being seen in such an exaggerated way now seems to bring us an exaggerated benefit.
가서 그래. 상지 중립되기 송기 나로라. 다 딘데기 취미지 나도디 자와디양 다 다든 심바 나 다든 심 신주로기 다든 심벤 심바지 당진레시시네 나세 상디 자와디요레시 어디송고로 다 디다리 나순 드시 잠고시 디잖아 동니 고런 드시 자고지기로 다 망부지 자고지 망부지 던지디
So therefore, this is what we need to understand, that there are these two aspects of the exaggerating attitude. When these two come together, then the result is attachment. Of course, there's another main cause of attachment. The Buddha himself has talked about grasping at a self, which is a wrong consciousness, which is a mind that exaggerates the existence of the self and perceives I based on that. But there's no need to explain this here, because that would mean Rinpoche will have to talk about emptiness.
뇌차지역이 강도 주조디 라니라로 라니기 수수기 이동어통 수수기 모부디 첼레게 이동어 통화디 수수기 유디 첼레게 야부 통화 디조 차송 다 딜러 땡네 딘데기 추미제 난도러 땡네 아니 생 유디러 파 수지지네 생 유디러 파 가서 그래 자르지지네 딘네 수카테마 토에디 용고르 가듀인 센나 샤데티 용고로 다딘 되샤 두스용고 다딘 인디가는 가서 되샤 딜레사디 센네 잔 류당 두고 말이다 류 잔이 류고 말고 당지 답에 당만나시 잔 류고 말어 다 딘데기 류당 미토 되샤 디기 자오디 추미시 난도 인디가나 추미시기 난도 디네 가소나 다 추미시 난도 디 가소나 되샤 가도로 추미시 난도 디 간데스가 수미지기 나도디 유디 셀레게 이동하지 통이디가 당고에네 수라 오 유디 셀레게 이동하던데 이동하스늘에 셀레게 야부 딘데 말이스 야베 차요레 아니 쩨기 차요레 펜베 차요레 뇌베 차요레 마세베 수수 생기 통화나 생기 배 가두인의 핀두치 통해서 딘데 요마 뒤쪽이 차네요 뒤다의 핀두치 통해 요 말에 쿠란기 무이찬의 시에 있나요 다바 땜베랑시 다바당 로 딘데기 랑신지 요 말에 메타베 랑신레 다나신기 디 쿠란기 진진네 쿠란기 수수의 펜비차 요베마세 쿠란 나술의 펜토 요에 데킹기 모부 다랑라 때네 라니라 뇌베차 라니라 동에 제베차 로 라니라 모부 다랑게 동에 나수버지 제유여바 디주 차상 라주 땅유디가 안에다 뭐에 줄로 쿠딘데지레도 상상순르지 통용디가라 추미 셀레게 이동 통해 루티파 까토도
Having therefore identified the main cause, one of the main causes of attachment, well, in that way, now the next question is, well, this mind being this attachment, the attachment being a mind that exaggerates the positive aspects of this object, well, having understood that its main cause is this exaggerating attitude, that it arises on the basis of that, and on the basis of that arising means that because there's exaggerating mind, therefore then the attachment perceives the object to be extreme, again exaggerates the positive aspects of this object, and therefore gets pierced by the object, gets glued to the object, is not able to let go, and is not able to be separated from it. So that kind of mind that is unable to let go, if it arises from this exaggerating attitude, how about stopping the exaggerating attitude? How about stopping this exaggerating mind? This mind that is unrealistic. In the sense that if we understand that the object, the way it appears, that it doesn't exist in the way in which it appears, that it's impossible to exist in the way it appears. It has faults. It has, of course, positive qualities as well, but it also has negative qualities. It can benefit me. It can harm me. In that way, it's beneficial to be realistic, to think of the actual nature of this object, to look at it from all sides, to also understand that it's not permanent, that it's changing, that it's impermanent, it's constantly changing. And that in dependence on this object,
이상도 마세비 가서고리 나중에 더 야우시우지 통대기 유디 유크랑 차선바이나 나중에 통마기 상로 코랑 충족도 나중에 대화 참마 슈르기 유르디네 도야기 상디 당디기도 디 수수 디부 용야기 주조디 슈르기 무부디 임바디 나솔라 가서 상수디 노트주요래 대화 참마 슈르기 무부자니 대화 조디 대주 조디 슈르기 무부레샤 나솔라 고베 대화디 조디 슈르기 무부간 소용고도 상상 디 나솔라 가서 낭수당 딘제긴진 짐바 신주로주요로 다디 말레스 디오조디 슈르기 무부기 제투기요 말이 제유요 말이 제이미도 슈르기 무부 차상 twin진 차상 유킨디야 베 디지 시부주유빙 이범미도 다디 다랑 그 돈이 하고도 오라 디오세디 상르 당당 그 돈이 조 용고유여 디 년다디야 시부요레스 상류 나로라 다 무부 칸데 주총바 이너리 무부디 총베 카토라 로고 대화의 동에서의 상만 지마진이 되봐 수수기 롱주기 자진디 수수기 시 튠진 시 무비 튠진디 가츠체 통부차바 이너리 가츠베 야제친바 이너리 야제친베 디거라야 단다 나신기 단다 유베 생기 강에다 단다 유베 류기 강에 하나 시제 차내리다 시제기 류기 강에 차상 씹어지잖아 요래 저랑라 동슈망부 유베 차나 수부깔레시 가야메 차그르베 차그 말해 나서 나중에 차그르베 차그 말해 아니 신다 파샹가도 참번 나해요로 뭐 동슈망부 라사디 참번 나해메 차그래 차그 말해 단돈지제는 참번 마원 나게 유지를 가이나 저 야마 마무들 내가 마무지 참번 마원 나시로 세상 아니 수부 나로기 년고기 뉴버디 뭐 동슈망부 라사디 년고기 뉴버디 야 누구베 누구 말해디 시제 집어지장래 제가 디 참마 통고 뭐 디 참마 통고 디 통소는 안에 디 종나야 변부차네야 오스레 세디로 다야 상동다 신다디 유여에 있는 가가다 지 변부기 고자 디주네 신진을 핀바 줘이나 상추 카가로 하다 디카 디 마인바 뱀부기 고자 종나야 집어집어래 가르 종나야 또 집어집어래 상유나 따디 딘도 세나 가르 종나야지 야부도 세리 용도도 지디리
Okay. I hope you can hear me now. Sorry, I was suddenly muted. So Rinpoche said, well, therefore, it's important to know that. So we need to know that the external objects cannot give us this happiness, and we can easily infer from people who have a lot of external objects that they're not necessarily happier. Therefore, whatever object there is, it has the ability to give us happiness and suffering. So it's pretty equal, basically, in the sense that actually, if we utilize certain objects, there's no guarantee that we're actually happier. So external objects are very limited in what they can actually do for us, because even if we have more external objects, if we have more possessions and so forth, well, the basis remains the same. We still have the same mind, we have the same body. So the same physical problems may still arise. For instance, we still get sick, we still get old, we may even still get a cold. In fact, if we are more, if we have more money, if we have more possessions, we may get a cold more often because we're working harder, we're more exposed to certain viruses and so forth. Our immune system may actually, well, our immune system may remain the same whether we have a lot of things or not. So the point is therefore that the basis is still the same. So the same mind, the same body, and on that basis we experience similar happiness and suffering. Therefore, our happiness and our suffering won't change drastically in dependence on how much we own. Of course, a difference here may be if we have certain higher positions. This is not about possessing certain objects, but having certain positions and in connection to that, I mean, related to that, the kind of work we do. But that's different. In general, just talking about objects, certain objects, like having more objects, having more possessions, well, that doesn't guarantee, or that doesn't mean we're necessarily more happy. That doesn't mean we're happier or we have less suffering. There's no guarantee because of the reason Rinpoche just gave.
다 생기 나로라 가두는 류다마도 제진의 생나로라 첸대조라 가두는 코데디 지메버차 심바도 뢰샤베 순지로 생유디를 차지진의 딜을 수지진 디체도 신제제대야 아니 저제대야 두버제대 지메버차 순다 생베드베 뢰샤수다 다 생도스 탑에 당대디 팔려베 순지 다 오네기 시디 생기 시디 조어디 디디지 레제시네 오네기 심바 지부디 퇴식이 자 다양 심바 퇴식이 차스를 디가는 파바 나신 주제니 주자신 내디에 디스요 말다 심바 베드 혈려제로 심바 혈려기 토네 단 혈려 다단 혈려 시비 정소시 내디에이나 다디한 구버 차도 심바 혈려 지 시디 침물레베 카도디라 슈르드 난지기 시르비지 당지지네 오다 제 구버디 가르지 제 미구버디 가르지 랑라 푸르 펜바 유디바 로 땡도 펜도 유디바디 가르지 니버드 제 구버디 가르지 시지 다 싫어지 리닌 제비 싫어지 무비네츠 무에네츠라 때네 아니 오단디 니버드 푸르 펜바드레시 니버드 두고도 두고바 마세베 전주땡이 두고 전주땡이 두바이나 주부 아니 중제디 토토르 전주땡고에디 전주땡고베 주첸다 전주기 편다 디수 상시지니 다 싫어다 전주당 즈베기 유엔디 디수 야제 당시시 지제용디가라 다 되자게 왕게 센투야다 마지베디 지제메바샤 심바베 생기 시디디베 디오슈 침부여버시 디토니 싫어 베제당의 제용디가라 상르나로라 로 슐로라 강에 가르치네야 세네 sen chuya yobala su dizu jijang meba cha da ha leba chi cha yung da la ngone yi da kaso re gu yang bu shiu chi be 가rin ina ya be zhe 통해 가rin ina ya 가rin 정보 ina ya 다 진짜 가서 그래 가 용그레 세지마도 다 미스베지 시샤 상상지 잔이베 현톤도 지고로 다지 중샤스를 수수의 진 연구들라 디가나 다인의 할레버 용미스베지 종송 상상 순의 딘데기베 잠블리 참아 톤도 얘기 톤주베 나오셔야 돼 해봐차 디 할레베 지부 말베니다 생나 딘데 중도나
So if we really think the way Rinpoche just described, so we adopt this realistic attitude, well, then we can reduce the exaggerated mind. And if we reduce the exaggerated mind, we can also reduce attachment. And if we are able to reduce our attachment, well, our mind will become a lot more relaxed. There's more freedom. We'll experience more freedom, more space in our mind. There'll be less expectations and we'll be calmer. Our mind is not tied by the rope of attachment, but instead there's the sense of freedom. Which, however, doesn't mean we should then, once we become really calm and relaxed, become like a pig and just sleep all day long. That's not what's meant by this. I mean, not to become lazy. It's not a good idea to become really lazy once we've become more relaxed and calmer because of the absence of attachment. Well, no, now we need to apply our wisdom, our discerning wisdom that discerns reality, to check what is it that we need to do with our life? What is it that benefits us in the long term? It's important to adopt a realistic attitude that is in accordance with reality by using our discerning wisdom. And to work hard, to be diligent, to make an effort, to understand that diligence and perseverance, well, that they're important, to understand their advantages, their positive qualities, and understand why they're important. And in particular, wisdom is important. Patience, forbearance is important. So in that way, if we are able to reduce our attachment in the way just described, and instead develop positive qualities such as wisdom, diligence, patience, and so forth, well, we'll generate great inner peace. We're able to develop great inner peace. And with the wisdom, if we're able to develop our wisdom, to enhance our wisdom, that wisdom will help us to overcome a lot of external problems, helps us to face external problems and solve these problems, which gives rise to so much happiness. And giving rise to so much happiness, well, then whatever happens, we can bear it. We're able to face the problems in our life, that no matter what happens, well, we understand that's just in the nature of life. So there's no sense, how can this happen to me? How can such a disaster happen to me? A sense that the whole world is going down because of that. Instead, there's a sense that's in the nature of things. That's natural. This is what happens. And so therefore, isn't that wonderful? Wouldn't that be a wonderful kind of situation that we experience great happiness, we have less problems, and there's a lot more freedom? Wouldn't it be a wonderful state to work towards? Wouldn't it be wonderful to reach such a state?
뒤진데 가서 니체바 시고도 수수로 구여바다 수수기 뇌바니버디 가른 되기도 쓰라는 참은 되기로 야부 참은 되기로 가서로 야와 참은 지디 참아 고스도 야부 가르톤 디구 시지네 로 구버는 되바디 세면도 뭐냐기 구버디 가르스는 다 딜 채요래. 세상 구이보단 되버니부디로 需要的想要你不的切不细骨的给情不多样。
It's important to distinguish between what we need and what we want. When it comes to what we want, well, there's so much we want. We want everything that is positive. We want all that is good. Our mind exaggerates in terms of what it wants. There's so much it wants. So there's the measure of what we want. It goes beyond what we actually need. What we need is a lot less. So therefore, it's a lot less we need, and we need to distinguish between what we need and what we want.
了恰巴当去了恰巴前那这个马里边是就我盯着去多，第二这个马里是训吧，卡的时候你讲了他去了恰巴当拉玛了恰巴的刚才训过的是呢，拉玛的叔叔的拼图有吧咯，大一老那些拉玛的被叔叔因为呢，册来给叔叔的册来给亚布吉当，册来给叔叔的拼图有不起，拉玛的叔叔的，拉玛的在了。 电准备呢，叔叔的拼图有不起，同年，你让了拼不有不起通，让给的菜里给要不去通起去，你身体那么了恰松呢，定这个嘛，但定对下下过的，第一，他妈的了，都眼这嘛都，但你么被路看得见不因那人，你么被路几个急了，说送几几年，你么被路第一卡里，卡里上班那些接近亲不因那他妈的了，刚刚进那路同样的。 자자자래 다 땡켜 버려 다 근데 많이 버치 라마를 잡아치로 말을 어디가는 양 어디 가서 니 구치지네 라마 자지 뭐 말해배 오늘 입에 할래배 야부 말해배서 디스기와 말해 라미기 송디기 송기 당아디기 신진 탄제를 핑규여 받아 상제기 땜버 다시 제버치 유여 받아 신진 망부기 동에 세워치 유여 봐 신진 망부를 랑양 답을 땡규여 봐 디톤에 디 주센지 라마라 쿠바다 데발레바 인다디 주센 디 주센지르다 라마 디 테 존나 나라라 핀토 연구도 나랑기 된다지 루투도 수수기 장내리다 나라라 핀토도 세디 니 나라랑기 된다지 루투도 디 셀레게 야부지 통도 상상기 가소래 나와치 다가 다기 나와나 신고에 주도 밑에 나와치 레로 가dü이나야고 라미기 송디 가dü이나 대규여바다 라마디 가dü이나 베수수라 핀도 로치지니 슈규여바스네 딘데기베 나와 신지로기 주미지기 나도 망볼레지지네 신차소나 노트레스 다디마이 디주신지 많이 버시 오 라미 송디기 신 나소 참말라 라양 다버 땡기도 罗生间罗忙不了拼不几度，没忙不有刚也是一度是些，第几星期那么了苦不的对不来呢？但第贵点呢？
Yesterday, someone asked the question whether it's okay to have attachment towards the Lama and the Dharma. And in response to that, Rinpoche already said it yesterday, but also Rinpoche stressed it again today that, well, it's not appropriate to have attachment towards one's Lama, towards the Dharma. Why? Because the Lama's purpose is to benefit sentient beings. Our attachment is an exaggerated mental factor. So it's an exaggerated mind that is mainly concerned with one's own benefit. And having attachment towards the Lama, for instance, gives rise to a lot of problems. Does that mean the Lama is not precious? Well, that doesn't mean the Lama is not precious. The Lama is precious in the sense that the teachings the Lama gives, the instructions the Lama gives, benefit sentient beings. It's of great benefit to sentient beings. And these sentient beings, it helps sentient beings to relieve their suffering. It helps them to find more happiness and so forth. Therefore, it's appropriate to have faith and devotion in one's Lama. But when we have attachment towards the Lama, then there's this desire that the Lama benefits ourselves. Our self-centeredness comes in. There's an extreme notion that the Lama will benefit me, will fulfill my wishes and so forth. That is just extreme. That's not in accordance with reality. It's unrealistic. Also the sense that the Lama will always be there, the Lama will always teach, the Lama the situation with the Lama will not change. That again is also unrealistic. That is a wrong kind of attitude. Therefore, any kind of attachment that is connected to or that functions on the basis of self-centeredness towards the Lama, well, that is always a problem. It's unrealistic and harmful. The Lama's purpose is to be there for all sentient beings. The Lama's purpose is to give teachings for the benefit of all sentient beings, for the benefit of all sentient beings, or for the benefit of all sentient beings, and doing and working in such a way, benefiting sentient beings. The Lama is able to remove the suffering of many sentient beings. Therefore, faith and devotion are appropriate, but attachment is not. Attachment just creates problems.
다 수수기 라마라 가서 그래 진다 니부체디에디 되샤 슈치워렌데 문에기 양다베 대바디 슈치워렌데 세디 예 나준디 시에 수수기 라마라 신다 니부체디에디 대바주 임바이나 로 미신다지 라마라 준주치 디강라 수수롱라이지도 공부랑이지도 띵고 말레스 디 슈친부 용고 말레스 띵고 말레스 게시 수수기 라마라 신다 니부체디에디 되샤단지 저 슈친부 차되나 미신다지 라마라 준주치 디강라 수수롱라이디 슈친부 용고레스 디 수수 라마라 가부체디에디 되샤단 저 슈친부 예베 다레스.
Now, how do we know whether our attitude is one of attachment towards the Lama or one of pure faith, or faith that is realistic faith? So in both cases, there's a feeling of closeness towards the Lama. But in one case, that feeling of closeness is based on sincere faith and devotion. Well, if it's based on this mental closeness towards the Lama, if it's based on sincere faith and devotion, then even if someone criticizes the Lama, we don't get angry. We won't get angry, we won't get upset when another person criticizes our Lama. But if, on the other hand, our closeness, our mental closeness towards the Lama is mixed with attachment, then when another person criticizes our Lama, we'll feel angry and upset.
군도 랑 말했어요. 주생 가르스는 이거는 양다베 대바이나 그 주생의 대바 뭐에 저기 주생의 주생지 실을 샤는 주디간라 대바지고로 다 전주지 레디간라 전주디 수수기 대바디야 뭐에 주의 가서 그래 춘비 상지 땅에 대바디 줄을 제외인디간라 하슈 전주 정시 레디간 디야 센의 미즈베 연구 말해 안에 프랑기 하마고 진 종샤스로 이 딩웨네 주 말레스 마세 쿠란 전주 지기 레베이네 쿠란 전주 제디야 주진나 주비 왕게 용디고 꾸디 용시베 지르게 요 말레스기 심벌 흘려 차디 당분이 대버디고 주진 양다버지 돈 주디간라 뭐네 주의 전주 진기 레디간라 디양고 시절의 용시베 진디간 사마 주에도 그렇고 그 간스는 코바 친구 차고로 이 뭐네 주도 되는 동이 길로 지리더라 난 되차던 지디간은 되차의 세상 야부만도 도자지 용무 주스고 다 가지고 있는 들이 너무 별로 주제디 디친구요 가서 그래 하장기 태제 친구 太过分 하장기 태제 친구요 가르스는 지만도 용주고 말해 되차의 가르스고 그랬으면 야부 샤다 인구스고 본도 있으면 가서 도자 샤다 인구스고 나 도자만도 야부지 용무 주스고 할 가서 그래 셀레 개베 태제 치라지시네 용구요 말을 주고 말어 되자든 미전주 제딩을 잔다티의 용미시버지 그 용시버지 수도 되네 아니 좀도 차인 걸 공부한 거를 이내로지
Well, pure faith and devotion towards the Lama is based on a realistic kind of mind. So it's based on logical reasons that accord with reality. So, for instance, if someone criticizes our Lama, well, in that case, we understand. There's a realistic kind of understanding that, well, it's possible. Some people may not understand the qualities of this Lama, may not really understand why the Lama, who the Lama actually is, may not really recognize his or her great qualities. Or in the case of someone criticizing, well, there may be certain causes and conditions why someone criticized the Lama. And again, understanding that these are the reasons, these are the causes and conditions, and the mind still remains calm. The mind does not get upset because it understands the situation. It has an overall sense of why someone criticizes the Lama. Our faith remains the same, but we don't get angry with the person criticizing the Lama. There's no sense, I cannot bear this. The mind is so much more expansive. It's so far-reaching in the sense that it looks at the situation from all angles. On the other hand, if there's attachment, well, the problem with a mind such as attachment, it's an afflicted type of mind, and it only sees one perspective. It's an extreme mind. It exaggerates. It is an extreme type of mind. So when there's something positive, then it can only be positive, and everything in relation to that object has to be positive. If there's something negative, everything is negative. It's only negative. So it's unable to see things in a more varied thing, in the more varieties of different aspects. It's not able to see that there's more than just only positive or only negative. And that's the problem with the afflicted mind. The afflicted mind is always extreme, always exaggerate. It can only be one or the other. There doesn't seem to be anything in between. Whereas the mind of a real faith that is not mixed with attachment is realistic, applies logic, and sees the situation from all different perspectives.
다 이제 주고럼 아무 전에 파지 저지 도스 세나 갈코 디수제디 시시시 주들지고 있어요. 다디 하나 가버리셔. 다른 디치고 진짜 당아서 세나로라 ngāndāda tīsūlē tīn dēshāla tūdī yuwa tīchī tī kōtī tōs jīchē tā mūchē nī sāng tāng kōrdā, mūchē nī sāng tāng, mūchē sāng tā tāndōng bē jūchē māng bō tīndē nian māng jīmbā tīndē shūgu sāng bē nāng lō la māng jīmbā tīndē lā bā tīndē yuwa sī tī nāmbā sūgī tā jē bā chē chī nā yāng jūchē sē bā tīndē nī sī tīsū kēshī mū tū tī gōmbā shī rō nāng sī.
Now, actually, Rinpoche says it would be nice in this situation to discuss, to have a discussion, to have an exchange. However, given the circumstances, it's difficult to have a discussion, to have this exchange going back and forth. So we're unable to discuss here. But anyway, all the reasons that I've given you, you should think about them and come up with your own reasons with regard to what I just said. So to think of more logical reasons, give it a deeper thought, analyze what I have said, look at it from your own perspective, and kind of advance from there. I mean, like extend it from there, go deeper into the matter.
망부지가 신나 shum바지 지진에 갈래티도 다 shum바지 당연 용고 말에서 shum바지 위 갈래티기 왜 인디간라다 shum바스나 간대지가 쓰기래 shum바지에기 주진 가르래 아니 shum발레바이나 콜로 쮸 가리 요래 님이 가리 요래 아니 shum바디파 도야기 님부 간데스 땡고 그랬어 상을 간데 땅 그랬어 어디 또 쉬나 상수.
And another topic Rinpoche would like to talk about today is depression. This seems to be a huge problem in the modern world, that people feel depressed, feel discouraged, feel low. And Rinpoche would like to address today, would like to talk about, first of all, what are the causes and conditions for depression? Why do we get depressed? What are the disadvantages? In what way does depression harm us? And also, what are the antidotes to depression?
제 투자 말에 ngalada ke 용사 말에 진에 배 가속을 냥마부 지진에 아니 미기 지지 제슈 내가 개슈 제슈 시지 러용 디간라 다디다 내 용마레 시지네 내디 제투 마레 시지 센도 스마 어 냥마부 샤시지네로 생기 팡스그로 우방디 tum부 매버지 센만도 ngu마 도스 가서 그래 구디비스네 냐차디비스네 어딘데지라 냐차버스르도 시야 자닌 구자야메 되고 어딘데 이다 신용지라 근데 이 루지라 아니 shum바스 오레스
Now, what does it mean? What does this depression here mean? What is this deep sense of unhappiness that Rinpoche describes here, this sense of discouragement? Well, there's a sense I cannot do anything, a feeling of discouragement, like feeling discouraged, feeling really low about ourselves. So the sense of feeling low to such a degree that it seems impossible to lift our head, to lift up our head. So it's kind of everything is pressing on us. This is what this kind of depression is.
다 수수는 게지 망부체바다 미신다기 수수의 가서 그래 통중 동안로 수바다 딘데기 게지 미dim비슈 망부체 체바 게지 망부여바 통화 이 지체 다 디네야 수수기 가서 그래 니도 총바 싫어 니 누구 좀다 니도스 그래 상류기 도디로 루도 총와 아니 싫어 총와 디수제디 다나신기 류기 또 신바 디수제디다 shum바집이 주자고 그랬어.
Now, as to the causes or conditions that give rise to such a state of hopelessness or depression, well, first of all, the sense that I have no abilities, I'm not where I have no capacity, the sense of not being able to see our potential, not being able to really recognize the potential we have, and a sense that there's so many problems. I have so many problems, so many difficulties. There's so many conditions, like conditions that are not conducive to me, problems.
가서 숑네 타보 유단 shum바집에는 가야 신디기 된다당 다 시로띵기 된다 네거기 된다다 푸기 된다 가야 줘요 말 shum바디 shum베 님이 지슈들이다 심보 숑지 심보 구스도 우차디니 생기 나서든데 레지지네 강에 침부 치로디 shum베기 님이리다.
So the sense like everything is just going wrong for me, there's nothing going right. And in that case, it's also there's not enough internal determination, not enough inner strength, not enough wisdom, not enough physical strength. So that it's all weakened. All these factors have weakened, and these are the causes or conditions of depression or of this sense of despair. And what are the negative aspects? What are the disadvantages of that? Well, the sense I can't do anything, that we're not able.
다 디레 나라 니바 가에 메상 녜지 제투사 마레 상비 상디 고 레용디 간라 다 디상당고 그래서 다 미토 요 마레 투 그래서 에로 포베 주세 가레 로디 간라 녜 가에 제투 마레 세죠 디바가야 고 그래서 가레 로디 간라 수수 단다 미 류딘치 토디오 그래서 미 류딘 류딘디 미 류딘레 다 가서 통해 유비 류딘기 나로로 미 류딘디 초투 버리 미 류딘 디자인의 마시베 가서라 미 레벨을 땜비 리닝 제비 싫어 리버 카르 니버 카르 디 수준 제투에기 싫어기 디 니버디 요리스 디자인의 마시베 단단 가서기 투마르 쓰고리 투켄 상말로 내가 디 제투켄기 미 상말로 당분 알아서도 집어했어 당 가서 나신시시 한도스 메르멘 주요르마도 아마네 마지디니 상마 제투긴 수지요 말했어. 그래서 디상당 그랬다.
So the disadvantages are that we can't look after ourselves, not in the short term, not in the long term. And there's no energy, there's no kind of drive, inner drive. So these are all the disadvantages. As to the antidote to depression or to this kind of mental despair, well, it's based on the thought there's nothing I can do. There's nothing really I can do in this situation. But that's not true. There's so much we can do. We have to come to understand there's so much we can do because we are a human being. I mean, of all the different types of existence, well, the human existence is considered to be superior in that we have this incredible intelligence, having a human body, having a human brain. Therefore, we can utilize our brain in so many different ways. We can distinguish between what is right, what is wrong, what is good, what is bad, what is harmful, what is beneficial, and so forth. We have this ability to distinguish. And we're all the same, basically. There's not a big difference between other human beings and ourselves. We were all born in a similar way that we were not able, not very capable when we were born.
do thoya khona kale khawure sha khare lo digala ti do bala doya gi do be thaw ro ti legal lo chimbu dan jebu lo chimbu di doje gi thaw sla we tholang di do du digala ta lega kale khawu shi uji che gu du shesan ti che thoya di kale khawure re sha san da che thoya min do san che gi nyuba di min do san tin de chimba ina.
So it's possible that there's a certain work that I would like to do, an important work. But because it's an important work, well, it may come along with certain difficulties. So it's not easy to do this job. It is important. It's important to do this work. It's important to do it. However, it's difficult. It's not easy to do. So in such a situation, when it isn't easy to do this particular work,
Tadi keo mares doje gi thaw jebu lo chimbu di dubi thaw di ro thaw di la ko rimbo mambu yebe na nge la le lao thaw ti su ti du ji la ka le khaw ti su ti du be na ka so re le ga nyuba de ma sun jaje ja tamba le ga jaje ja tamba ji 다 자세 자다 마슬라 고르베 간더 지 깔레 카부 시부치에 외기 tinde기 내가 지여버이나 다디 자샤도마 디 자샤기 자샤 지니 당부 지니 손님 구주 디네 쥐담바지 디네 림베림베 쥐쥐존이지 도시치니야 군보부니 림베림베 레라사네 구주네 죄요로스特시 당부지디
but even though it may be difficult, this work may be difficult, well, there are different methods by which we can tackle this kind of work. So we start with the easier aspects. We don't need to right away start with the difficult parts, but we start with the easier aspects and then work ourselves forward. I mean, then start to tackle also the more difficult aspects. So that's okay because there are these different methods. So we may start with just doing 1% and then 2%, 5%, and then 10% and so forth. So step by step, we can take this kind of slow approach, starting with the easier aspects and then work towards the harder ones and just slowly, step by step, apply the different methods. So in such a way, such an effective way, we can master a particular job or particular work.
Lega kande chimba inare lega di kale khabu yo marese di tambu magombe kala kumba mebe kala sama kale khabu yores ro sama kale khabu yores ta gonsona 사른 뇌메 되바 렐하르 사른 뇌메 되바 가요 말이스 당분간 수깔래 가고 싶도 세 디제디 티마치지 니지 송지 시지 디네베 렐하고 싶으더래 차는 그래스 세상 디 고만 공경왕들에서 공부된 소나 공지 공신 집을 제버이나 아니 렐하고 차는 그래스
And whatever work there is, well, one of the reasons we find it difficult is that we're not familiar with it. We're lacking familiarity with a particular activity. But this activity, well, once we become more familiar with it, then it'll become easier, because with familiarity, there's nothing that doesn't become easier. And familiarity requires repetition. Now, doing a certain work, a job, or any kind of activity that we find initially difficult, well, we do it once, we do it twice, we do it 3 times, and so forth, and it gets easier.
被全部那个忙不了被见细微的这个说，大样，第四个来说，假我的卡说的，那个的钱的被忙不休息结果都的钱被头忙不休息说，那个干来考不。这不的住吧了，那个干来考不忙不休息住过都，但今年住过呢，我这忙不恰上的住退，别干来考不多少了为呢？的卷要嘛的是，那个干来考不南张忙不，干最要为呢的，的确是第了八百特西样忙不，第了八百特西要的是，其实那个干来考不干最忙不要为呢的，特西第了忙要的是。 딜레마의 덫이 용거리 있다. 또 나지고 있는.
Now, there are many examples, actually. If it's, for instance, an activity that is really difficult, a job, some kind of work, a kind of activity that's really important, difficult, important and difficult, well, there's so many methods that we can apply. There's so many different methods we can apply to successfully accomplish this particular task. Now, of course, there are difficulties. There may be many different difficult aspects that are part of this task. But that's not a problem, because there are even more methods, even more methods than problems that we can apply to successfully overcome these problems and accomplish this particular task, or be able to do this particular task. So there are always more methods than there are problems. And in that way, using these methods, applying these methods, will definitely be able to do a particular job or do a particular task.
方法更多。
困难多，方法更多。
那样开始你听过的是，卡啥？开始你的听过上难路了。아니, 다디, 제보디 누가 침배이나, 된다디 누가 침배이나, 다 깔래하고 시우지래샤. 아니, 이래다 만주는 야사를 상상, 누가 만주는 야사를 상상, 된데 친구들, 디 하장이 노출 침배랬어. 내가디 누가 침배이나, 깔래하고 요리디, 용수유리디, 내가디 제가 만 침배이나, 레전드 누가 가야 만 침배시, 핀도유비 내가 러지무디네 가야 누가 만 침배이나, 대대배이나, 딜레 깔레 카오요리스다. 누가 침베 깔레 강에 레장 가야 누가 마침베 지시네 깔레 체니 두로이나 가야 누가 마침베 지시네 데데네 깔레 체야티 딜레 마오요리스다. 딜레 마오에 강에 지체인 거리스. 그래서 다 단가 가르자고 그래.
Some may think, well, this task is too difficult. It's too difficult to do. So better not to do it at all. But that's actually a mistake. It's more of a problem if there's an important task, in particular in the case of an important task. If it's difficult and we don't do it because it's too difficult, well, the problems are much greater to not do it than to undergo the difficulties of trying to do this task. So in that way, we need to think about it. We need to choose what to choose. If the problems are greater if we don't do it at all, then are we not going to choose to do it?
양修行的今年的上当的的这当地主上嘛的毕竟让人开始研学的专注爬行卡多了送药的让人进步说对军的人家说上当过多的送药的他们的了 된다 디디 손 다야 자와 갈래 가보 디데 진짜 별로 친구 내가 갈래 가고 싶지고도 아니 다디 갈래 가보 레스 가서 양양디 코인 거라 다디 뭐네 주제면 디 노트리스 가레스 디간라 자와 코랑 게 뭐네 시에나 갈래 가보 제 갈래 가보 요 말에 하부레스 얘기 자와 코랑 게 돈에 가보다 하부스 얘기 체버디 요 말했어 내가 코랑기 돈에 갈래 가보기 내가래 레 하보기 내가래 시지네 이요 말스 내가 돈에 내가 간대지는 채버요 말. 단 갈래 가보요 하보요 쓰디 간대시고 월스나 내가 제킹기 밀을 뛰네 계시고 월스. 수수를 갈래 가보요서 다디 갈래 가고 싶어 그랬어. 수수를 레라보요서 다디 레라고 싶어 그랬어 시지네. 제법불 뛰네 파시에 되고 얼마도 자오 코랑기 돈에 가요 레스에다 파요 레스는 지요 말. 그 내가 이 상마 집어랬어. 빼나 간대랬으나
Now, all this explanation Rinpoche has given so far, you can find in the Lamim Chamur, in Lama Tsongkhapa's great treatise on the stages of the path to enlightenment, in the chapter on diligence or perseverance. But anyway, with regard to a difficult job, a difficult task, for instance, well, this task is in itself neither difficult nor easy. It's neither of these. It's not difficult or easy. When we say a particular task is difficult or easy, it has nothing to do with the task itself, but it's rather dependent or in relation to the person that does this particular task. So in that case, we can say that it's in relation to that person, either easy or difficult. But that's got nothing to do with this activity itself, with the task itself. That in itself is neither. It's all in relation to the person. So to give you an example,
신수 여러 신기 내가 신 조지수에 당디 가족을 내지송에도 신수기 내가 라시다기 공부 용인지를 시에나 콜어듀디 조지수에 당 신저야 당 신도야 당 신의 수다 수에 들래라고 싶으러 간서 공대어라 다 딘데기 공부 가야매 딩기 미지라 신디라 수단다마다 수신 아니 가족을 조지수 지수스라는 하장게 갈래가고 차들이 수고나 시그마로 빼갈래가고 콜을 제주에이나 영향을 거라면 다나 신기 빼는 마저 시킨기 마저와라 하장기 캐와인 딩기 망지 친구 지여와 있나로 다코 마저에게 내가 딩문이지는 신나사부로 다코 마저가 누르는 가가 뚜뚜지다 빼게 마저도 코베 루세 요래 루고 요래 상마요로 망세를 캐비 마벤티라 양 수나를 레지지 난기 신게 내가 지수스라이나 주터야다 출루야다 류자야다 네 아니 제망아야다 아니 잠바수야다 디수제스나 다그 미시지 빼갈래 가고 차스기로다 제가 뒤니 자야마도 디나신 나 민카시에기 루 주담벌 제고에기 내가디 민카시에기 루진이나 제샤고르 민카시에기 루진이나 제기 내가디 민카시에기 루주 담벌인데 베지 주주 당 제고르다디 강사 수수를 뒤니 라야마도 시간 제요 뭐로 다 상쇼심바 디줄을 비자니 시에는 딜레장 시에요를 빼나 아주지 당 미 참말라 류기베 샤tum부지네 밀레심바 땅슬라위는 수직이 제도고 말어 상쇼심바베 동유 심바 동유 루 용수 조사킨 이진베 파생이 냥네 용수 조사킨 수수류 땅와 류 동야기 베 뽑아디 용수 조상이 텐데지라 샤리리네 동슬라위는 동투바다 아장장 근데 동야 중바디 할레베 야부 중송 상치치네 가오바도 매버지 되지 제대디 샤베 동물이 상지 동물이 또네 또네 임바 동야기 자와디 상주스ம்ப 딘데지라 할레베 레나버리 나술라 할레베 깔레 가버리 제대디 요 말했어 자유문이시에 요 말했어 알레 니다 안다 루브르도 신다지 진수 디지 쉬치워지 당연히 가산디 간디 류제쟁이지도 류제쟁이 디기 기사 니마리라 킬로미터 손주 탐바 이나지 주샤 류기회사 니마리를
Mhm.
킬로미터 손지 담바
음.
슈게 가서 주제 지서 니세기나 니 주제 니세기나 주샤르네 킬로미터 손지 담을 류에서 다 콜라 니마 따버시 류제제버 인상 주제 니즈 나로라 지데 셰가 있는 지서다니 주제 다다니 마소 킬로미터 손지 담을 주세디 콜라 베 레라브레사 다 나수 주제 지니는 킬로미터 손지 담을 주고 이마야 말이야 말다 킬로미터 손지 주도 위에나 손싱아 다 주담을 주도는 안기 담보래
Mhm. So the example here Rinpoche gives is the example of a carpenter. So someone who's a skilled carpenter, well, they can easily build tables, beds, and so forth. They're familiar with cutting the wood, putting it together, uh, um, grinding it, and so forth. I mean, putting in their nails in the right spot and so forth. So for them, it's really easy to build a table, to build a bed, or to make a table and so forth. But someone who's not familiar, who's never worked as a carpenter, who has never learned to make objects from wood, for them it would be very difficult. And then another example is, for instance, someone who's an expert in warfare, a person who's an expert, like a general who's an expert in fighting a war. Well, they have the courage, they have the expertise to lead the soldiers into battle. But if this general comes back home and has to live as an ordinary farmer, they might find it really difficult to plant seeds, to plow the fields, to harvest to bring in the harvest, to make tsamba, for instance, grind it, and so forth. So they may find that very difficult. It just depends on the person. In the first case, they're an expert in warfare, but it's very difficult for them to work as a farmer. And in some cases, some people who take 10 years to accomplish a particular work or accomplish a certain task, other people may just take a year. And others who need a year to accomplish something, others take 10 years. It always depends on the person. If we take the example of bodhisattvas, for instance, well, if they're able to practice the perfection of giving, the perfection of generosity, and they've reached a certain level of expertise when it comes to generosity, well, they can easily give away their body. They may cut up their flesh and give it to others. So not only do they find it easy to give away their flesh, to give away their body, cutting it up piece by piece, they also experience incredible bliss while doing so. So for them, it's extremely easy to sacrifice their body, to give away their flesh to those in need. While for us, it's extremely difficult. We're not only are we not able to give away our flesh, but we would greatly suffer to do so while doing so. Therefore, it's just dependent on the person, on the ability of certain people, familiarity with certain tasks. And then there's another example, Rinpoche said he just remembered he would like to add this. Some people find it really easy to exercise. For instance, he has just met someone who said that he jogs every day for 30 kilometers. It takes him about, Rinpoche isn't clear about the time, an hour and a half or two. So within an hour and a half or two,
내가 근데 된다 러침부 줘야지 로토야 그러면서 수수원에 제토내다 연유를 루부징이 마부면도 다 단대기 뒤에 도지 안 된대 지낭로라 미기 루부징이 따다 말아봐지 아니 가르쳐 그래 다 뒤니만가 두시고랑 가서 비제나 된대기 배 뒤에 뒤배 도자 시부치 배 추부시부치 거를 간데스 제토 그래 상상순데 일레버 있나야 디야 강에 말이스 가르쳐는 수수센의 쪼여버 있나 sen le zhunang yue wen yin na ruo du zui yin ren bu jie gui jin yin wen yin na ya du zui tun lu ji ma tu ke cuo gu ma le is di ruo ka sa sen le zhuo yue wen yin na ta ye du ji xi nu is ta ge si sen le zhunang me wen yin na jin due me ba da zhunang me wen yin na be du zui tun lu ji yin wen yin na lu ma bu ji ge nao xia de di gu le is xie zang din yin di gang la sen le zhunang qing bu jie tu wen ta din de jie do xi ha le be ya bu yin sang ga 가나지 가나가 돈이 제보이나 뒤쪽에 진통기 뒤쪽에 장내기 뒤 제번 두고 말 뒤쪽에 진통기 제번 간에 초고 말해 뒤쪽에 이름 묻지 제번이나 뒤쪽에 통동기 나오면 어떻게 리그 말했어 마세베 생의 주나 데메 돈에 내가 디파 제번이나 다 루부쟁이다 중바이나를 마중바이나를 고 상말로 수수 튠베징을 순조해지 좋아 루부 마제기 중바이나 개요말 다 루부 마제기 중바이나 그거 가두이나 루부쟁이지 용시버래 루부 마제기 용바 딜을 때내야 수수 세낭로다 생쇼 파야 마도지 알레 다 쿠랑기 에 게치무디 통통문도 다 나다 배 게치무쟁이디 인디간라 배 가속으로 메시지 차디에서 생쇼 파야기 줄을 반주해 순다 근데 차용 거래 세다 근데 상로만부 당시시네 아니 슝버 가야지 나나신 강라 싫어 총어스는 이거 싫어디 디리 비자 망보루 밀레 게자 망보티 수수상로 망보 땅에 있는 디 싫어 피 줄라는 매버리 싫어 권에 공도 피해요 닌도디 집어지장래 춘중원의 제지진 닌도야 권에 공도 공비든 줘요
So in the case of this person who jogs every day for 30 kilometers, it takes them only an hour and a half or two. So Rinpoche said if it was us, if we were to do it, if we're not being used to jogging for such long, jogging every day in such a way, well, we're lucky if we can manage to run 10 kilometers. In some situation, of course, also what happens is that we feel like there's no one to help us. It's difficult, we're totally on our own, there's no one there to help us. Well, we talk about the present time as the time of the 5D generation. So situations are difficult, we may be on our own and so forth, but actually what is important is to develop joy. That whatever we do, there's a sense of joy. We need to find this joy, because if we have joy, if we experience joy while we do certain tasks, then it becomes easy. Time passes quickly. If on the other hand, we don't enjoy what we're doing, then even if we were just doing it for a short time, it may feel like a really long time, like it may feel as long as a year. When there's joy, whatever we do, if there's joy, it becomes easy. Now, whether we have someone to do it with or not, it doesn't matter, because it's become easy. We enjoy doing it, therefore it's become easy. And we have this inner determination to do it, that no matter whether we have someone to do it with, whether there's someone to help us or not, it doesn't matter, because our determination is strong enough to do it. In that way, we feel strong about it. We have this inner determination that keeps us going, and it doesn't matter whether there's someone doing it with us or not. So therefore, this sense of discouragement or depression doesn't arise, because of this inner strength, this inner determination we've built or we've generated. And when we talk about a lack of wisdom, like wisdom being too weak, well, what can we do about this lack of understanding? Well, we can work towards generating an understanding. What is the best way to generate that understanding, that kind of wisdom, is to read about the certain situation, investigate it, talk to other people, analyze the situation by informing ourselves, reading, listening to explanations, talking to other people. So in that way, we're able to get a better understanding of what is possible of the situation, what we can do, what we cannot do. And combined then with this joy, we're able to do it even if we are on our own, even if there's no one else to help us. So in that way, we can overcome these limitations and not feel depressed, not feel low, and not feel a type of despair and discouragement, but instead be able to accomplish the task.
신베스로이는棉花
Yes.
신베디 롱기 신베스는 아주 가세 분다고 지어봐 신강을 진베 신베라고 지 진베디로 딘다고 지어봐 디 롱기도 스킨루디간라 지드 지드 롱주어 동원 신베 왕주 롱기도 스킨루디간라 그 신베디 롱기 쿠야라 롱라 갈레케요 말고 그 양부로도 스카우 롱기 long ye le jewe ku ye shu ni kindu gre kasu gre da ye ni do jewe ni pa kindu gre su yu ni su jewe ni pa kindu gre long gi shinbe ku ya la long le ka le kan yo ma ro long gi ya ki ma ki ku kasu gre long gi ka shu da dun chi pa do sun ju de ji di long le ka le kan yo ma ro su long gi shinbe ki ya la di na xin nga ran su sen di du ye xin wang dang ba yin de de duo ga wa gi xin wang de pa dang ba yin na 다 류기 까지 뒤서 깔래 가야 가요 말이야. 야, 디진 류 나온다. 류 양원 샤스 류야 라야다 마데 류기 레가지 가르치에 보이네요. 가가 내가 가르치네요. 배 가서 그래. 기부. 가요 내가 가르치에 보이네. 쪼나 이유 버지 레라우지. 배 심바 기부 용되지.多기 토니 제도에 좀 보인. 이용 거. 쪼예기 신 쪼예 신왕도 주어이나 류기 가와 참마 가와 말했다. 류기 깔래 참마 깔래 말했다. 생了马基本约为呢，生了马基本亲不约为呢，苏不给叫群众结果约为呢边呢，他说的，苏本估计在基本就叫过约为呢呀，叫没做下去，叫你妈做下去，地家的还讲你干来搞不差的下去，用个的是，但我呢，生了的这个多亲不用的，刚才结果的是了呢。
So in the text, it talks about the scriptures describe, give an example of, for instance, a very light object, like maybe a dust bunny or like a feather, like a very light kind of object. Well, it's carried away by the wind. It's carried left and right. It's carried everywhere. But there's no difficulty in doing so. It's easy for the wind to carry this object anywhere because the object is very light. So with the same example here of the wind easily carrying away a feather or a dust bunny or whatever it is. Well, similarly here, when our mind is joyful, when there's joy in our mind, then whatever task we're doing, it's easy. Whatever task we're trying to accomplish, it becomes easy. There's no difficulty because it's combined with this sense of joy and delight in doing this action. While if on the other hand, we're unhappy. So if our mind is unhappy, then we can't even move, and our body won't be able to move, and we find it very difficult to move. Anyway, so how to develop joy? How can we develop this joy? If
하장기 내가 넣친 임바다 내가 딜러디네 몽발라 수술을 제부 하장기 넣친 부지 또 가서 이진지 노부 장매를 사베 제부 친구지 투에 유버지 임바이나 또 제부 내 투에 유베 내가지 수수기 가두이나 제 유버이나 인가수 가고래 가고 말해.
If, for instance, like how to generate joy, if there's, for instance, the promise that if you do something, you get a lot of money, well, are we going to feel joyful in doing so if the reward is so great? Or to give you another example, if a particular task is extremely meaningful and we know that there's going to be a great result, a result such.
하장기 러친부 임버 파샤 근데 수수 나로 유디강了수수 나로 내가 가서 거다 칼라지 수나리 잘라지 비지 당나리 자마지 수베이나리 야부 제외는 참말로 고유 송적이 자와 지상 제외는 고유 송적이 자와 작으로 고유 송적이 자와딘 잠블리 송적이 자와래다 내가 러친부래 말이 미동수 제주 담발로 펜베 내가래다 고유 장마지 자와디 다 퇴행기 토네 잠블리 찌를 펜베 내가 러친 차디 거래 퇴행을 된데 이모 마세 수수 공원기 토네야 니 내가 니 제외이나 미동수 제주 참말의 핑계리 잠불이 참말의 핑계리 상비 공농기 돈이 제보이나 다 자어디 하장기 러칭기 자어지 차송 공농기 넘버 다보 유비 돈이 자어 장부 쉬우죠 자어 장부 딜 뉴버 메시지 왔다 뉴버 딜 때네 아니 수수기 친딜 자어 장부 딜 뉴버 딜被绿军中呢，中强牛不用呀。大那先给去上路呢，上路南路了，上路卡数的，上路张马当，上路让不当，上不那不大被掐的，先张马给掐的，手劲不掐呀。第二点呢，车当铺给转大忙不着远去，结果西马给图你西北呢，还来呗，这不把都没把着的，做顶这个图你多节约，不能。
So if there's a certain task that has an incredible result, a result that is greater than obtaining countless wish fulfilling jewels. Well, if we have that kind of, if we know that's the kind of result of the work we're doing, then there'll be joy. We will joyfully do this because of the great result we will eventually reap. And to give you just another example, like just a day-to-day kind of example, if we act in a way that is responsible when it comes to the environment, so in terms of how we clean things, when we make food and so forth, how we use the leftover, etc. Well, if it's good for the environment, then being good for the environment, it's not just good for us, but it's good for, well, at least 8 billion people on this planet. So in that way, it becomes really meaningful. There's an incredible result. It has an incredible effect on so many people, on so many living beings. So knowing that by acting responsibly, that we can actually benefit so many people, we can benefit the whole world, whether directly or indirectly, we understand the great importance of what we're doing. And we understand that it benefits others, so it has a great effect also on others, but also on ourselves. It has a great benefit on our body and on the body of others, on the elements in our body, if we keep the environment clean. So with this kind of pure attitude, our motivation is to help the environment, to help others, and with this kind of pure attitude, then there'll be short-term benefits, there'll be long-term benefits, there'll be a lot of advantages also in future lives.
叫我去这场嘛，对个阶级日那样，说还讲给那个老亲不，地里老亲没得呗，那个地，节约不去下地个的，大那些属于每次呢，每次赚的点不去，新了盘吧，赚的点不去节给谷歌的这些上去现在做的呀，主囊的手去当多人呢，那个卡的结尾那样，那个主囊有图你节的过来看要嘛的是。
Now, in all actions, well, if we consider the result, if we give some thought to the result, and if we see that the result is very extensive, that it's very positive, there's a great positive result or great positive effect that our actions have, then it's not that difficult to generate joy. In particular, if it benefits our mind, if we do certain action, if certain actions benefit us mentally a lot, then again, understanding that it's not hard to develop joy.
真的，这看些辛苦做那真是，这我们做的工地了，但大家给你们送的，更多些辛参助有的，看些年嘛你们送的些，你们送一些的些吧的，但忙吧了，但真这个真这企业的苦看说的，那么上级去给拿下一百亿呢，恰上级但我呢，但我点不起呢那的，我年送的。 是人不当不你不送不都是恰上预备，真这个老千没些送的去呢，俺让给上那了这都是写为呢，我做呢就把结为恰上出来就要了，阳面呢，那你看说了，比较送的去吃为呢，比较去吃去今年我呢就把都是去吃也送的去， 야면은 단단 나신고 가래 핀도 치고 통수는 딘데 치워이나 카투 핀도 치고 맨로 상상 딘데 기시 당지지네 치야 이 간데 지구 유나 상상 디틴디 가신 저지 나로 딘도 간다 가소를 루당 차상 유비 낭추 치당디 간데 지구를 세지 송샤 딩에 대해서 돈 하지 버인다 지상 치당 맨날 라는 순지 신부인의 쿠란나로 차상지어 디안 라는 도스말로니 디친부인의 도스 간의 자유의 상도 그 흉치 대비 순지다 라는기 사제 순의 인의 된다 차상지 가랑기 레베 나로야 주토의 더시지 엔도스 상동의 동의 차상지 체에 제외인의 양디 많이 봐 나중 우리지나 조디 디상 군주네 로教育 노분에 나주 지당 주어로 덴버니네 덴버시네教송네 아니다 니다 민중 다랑 정주 토네 민중 상용고를 아니 민중네 니지 친구的相处个现在都是两个人不恰上去支持南中国呢兄弟你恰上去支持呢只要低头去结果面路上接天的个现在第넘버 수기 공자지 근데 총의 야구도세 공자지 송토나 아니 티실을 샤는데 상동야기 시순의 작으로 근데 지나 진수다.
I see.
So now got time for some questions, but before we start with question and answers, Rinpoche said, well, we're nearing the end of our 3 days of teachings, and Rinpoche is thinking already about the future, how to do it in the future, how to go about it. So maybe to go through all the kind of major topics of the Dharma, starting with the Four Noble Truths, and then step by step to continue in such a way that we cover all the major topics, or to use a text, to teach a text from beginning to end and explain this text. That would be another option, or to choose the most kind of beneficial topics that Rinpoche at a certain point considers to be most beneficial. So like today, the teachings he's been giving for the last 3 days, to choose a topic in such a way, something kind of straightforward, maybe less connected to the scriptures. Anyway, Rinpoche says he's thinking about this. He doesn't really know, he hasn't really made a decision on this yet. But anyway, there was also one question about how do we study all the entire Dharma, and that made Rinpoche think. Now, Rinpoche, of course, could teach the Lamrim, could go through the entire Lamrim, the entire the treatises on the stages of the path to enlightenment, choose one of them and go through all of them. But it may also be possible, so in the sense like not really reading the text, but based on all the different headings, the different outlines, then guiding everyone through the Lamrim, or to teach the ways Holiness usually does, to start with a full renunciation, compassion, and bodhicitta. This is also another method. This would also be another way to give these teachings in a similar format that Rinpoche has given now twice. Anyway, this is something to think about, and Rinpoche is asking all of you to think about it, and maybe you have some ideas, maybe you have some suggestions as to how to proceed from here, how to continue with these kind of teachings. So please share your suggestions on the different kind of methods that have just been described.
Mm, 有问题吗？今天好像没有提问题的。저有什么的理由？
Doesn't seem there are any questions, Rinpoche says.
刚刚没有问题这些。我们大人菩萨道强调的是利益众生，常住于人间。最近我常常听到说今生无法成佛的理论，也就是说要修很多事才能证得涅槃。 如果我内心真是升起对自由的追求，且认真持戒和念佛。这个是不许不得，这个问题有点长，甚至说也
That's
是
a
你
long
没有。
question. Maybe Rinpoche is reading the question about lying flat. You find it in your chat. How do you view the current phenomenon of lying flat among young people in East Asia? Lying flat refers to a mindset among the younger generation where instead of striving and competing, they choose to lie flat, remaining desireless and unambitious. They no longer crave success, but instead compromise, give up, and adopt a passive attitude to cope with societal pressures. Maybe that's the question Rinpoche is reading right now. I'm not sure.
是我积极做好自己的帮助更多人像菩萨一样，但是要离开之间的时候可以自由的决定涅槃，离开游戏内就像佛一样，这样可以吗？想离开不是因为自私，不想帮助人就不明白这样。一些游戏呢，我也之前有点差。大概我知道了。但뒤로 지워 뒤리샤 다 가르스 고래. 일단 가수 뒤리스 티버 친구. 다想学生别랑디做基金结果的是第一章申请了拼图主要的。但真正的讲了，的가정 딸의 양, 스타 신디는 주고 상제 투 말해서 되게 계제지 시기도스. 다 뒤인디 간라다 코랑기 다 호다바다 지어이나 주진송 아니 나장 저도 좀 안딘데지네 신디를 타워토토고 말베스. 다 간데 제고레스 다 딘다우르 지레샤로. 니다 딘네로지. 다 간들 想学生别跟主点接档的看这些事，是吧？我你嘛，什么情况？等于加上戏嘛，我听得着去。但短大片是，我的主要听得着去这个都，短大听的听住非常多。第二，几档的俺让说，第二，加个呢，他妈加那了能去打药了，加那了能去打呢，个肉去清啥为急了，第急了票了能去打药了，就是准备个了票呢。dunba jebe gala pyo na nangchu daya ngusu. Di gongla lu jara kaxe gong jana dasa. Di chuju di tsangma lu tiba chimbu ki chuju si jini. Lumba dina daya ki chu di da tiba chimbu ki chu darwa re. Da ina gansa susu tiba chimbu re ma re se di gansa susu ki ngui ne tiba chimbu shangchu ki sen la meba da shangchu ki sen ki nangni di katsuyo zi yungu du. Di la du ne tiba chimbu ki rizhin rindu mindu daya re ma du lumba na daya ki chu di tiba chimbu yinba dang, susu ki laozhong jaya dang, kaso tuisang jaya, anju lo kuya di tiba chimbu yinba zangji, susu rani tiba chimbu yinbi ngiba di yo ma res.
It seems the question is a different one, not the one I just read, but it's the question is, well, with regard to the Mahayana or the Nalanda tradition. Now, following the path of a bodhisattva, is it possible to become enlightened in this lifetime if we work hard? If we work hard in the sense of following ethical discipline, reciting mantras, becoming ordained, and so forth. Is it possible if we work hard that we attain enlightenment in this lifetime? And Rinpoche's answer is, well, first of all, with regard to the Dharma, in particular the Nalanda tradition or the Mahayana tradition, well, it went from India to China. And then around the 7th or 8th century, it was introduced in Tibet. When it was introduced in Tibet, when the Mahayana, the Nalanda tradition was introduced in Tibet, it existed in China for several hundred years. But when we talk about the Nalanda or the Mahayana tradition, that
칭디를 투투고 말해. 상제 기 고방디 칭디를 투투고 말했어요. 기 계제시에발라. 뇌 당부들 알령에라 수수기 타버 로고로. 탄제 침이 고방디 뇌라 수수기 로고로. 신다기 가르시 있는 맛이네요. 뇌라 수수기 타버다 탄제 침이 고방 로고로. 주야기 자와딩 구주 차비 지라니 미신 딜러 토토사레베 아니 양 세로 도마 주고 세레베세 디 강사 수수기 내당래 강사 카지니 다 루카시에 나로 타베 구방 통해 요래 루송 루송 쇼송 시월다 가소래 미지지 나로라 탄제 집에 구방 토토에 용시 버래 양지 지오 만부 주네 상제지 구방 토고에 드네 용시 버래 디 가래 임바이네 체와 요말 다 간다만다 수수기 제고야디 무퇴니치 제고야도 제토야디 제고야디 개침버래 가슨 디 제네 뒤죄린통 같이 고망고 세디 체와 개요말 간다만다 지 제니 제고거다 상제외네 지 제고거를 상마제외는 지 제고거를 아니 지 제고버 강시지라 수수기 가르 제토바다 야부 가르 제토바디 제니 침바 있는 다랑은 지대 요르마도 가뒤 상제마 제세다 뒤죄린통 같이 고망고 세디 조우 말해 조우디 가르스나 제고야디 제디 조우레스 뒤죄 같이 대고 중에 지발이다 가뒤인지 제대고로 제목구버지 요마다 제목구비 뒤죄 요마다 가서 여기 상제 구방 주에기 자오마지네 코너 대버이네 지 제고로 가서 다버시 제고도다 거의 내가
Now, whether we're a follower of the Mahayana or whether we are part of the Mahayana very much depends on our attitude. It's not enough to just study the Mahayana tradition, to study the Nalanda tradition. It's really our attitude. So it depends on bodhicitta. If we have bodhicitta, if we generate compassion and so forth, well, then we enter the Mahayana path. But before we can even consider entering the Mahayana, well, before we can even think about, or before we should even think about whether we can become enlightened in this lifetime, we should ask ourselves, can we become liberated in this lifetime? Because before we can become enlightened, we have to become liberated. Liberation precedes enlightenment. And again, how long does it take? Well, for some, it may take countless eons. It just depends on the person. Some may attain liberation very quickly. It's all dependent on our own mind with regard to enlightenment. The same applies to enlightenment. Some may attain enlightenment in this very lifetime. Others may take countless lifetimes, many lifetimes, or countless eons. But the point is really that we need to do something and we can't do something. So in the sense that we can practice the Dharma, we need to practice the Dharma, and we can. So it's not that important when we reach our goal. It's not important how long it takes. We just have to do something. That's most important. So we have to practice. That's most important. How long and when we'll attain it is just secondary. To become enlightened, that is most important. And to do what is necessary to become enlightened is what's most important. And to understand that we can do so. We have to do something. I mean, even just in samsara, there's something we have to do. Even living in samsara, being part of or experiencing samsara, there's something we have to do. So here in the case of practicing the Dharma, well, we have to practice the Dharma, but again, it doesn't matter how long it takes.
저와지도 다디 가르스고르다 다 녜고네 딩상기选习 초기 다 가서 당빈스라는데
The lying flat question.
84년 KK 마체.
네, 그 남의 순대 땅에 가야 맞이해 순대 쓰거든. 다 가리네. 다 유슈세지로. 가리지. 저기 가리 존에 야부 존에 두자 존에 유슈케요 말했지. 다 데데디. 인더스고 있어.
北尊前内阳 pengi 有马瑞康伊斯那看这北尊前内阳女ရာ喜ra 랑 마투바女阳萨마투바 아니 가리前内 닝보 메바 딘드가 다가랑 년내 KK 마체나 야사레 인지기 삼추.
So it's this question about lying flat. So the Chinese translator also says like not doing anything. There's no point in making money and so.
내가 제내야 우이 망보라고 우이 계계라고 믿으스 딜레 가야 마제 버치신 데데 나스러이나 다 레가지 제네 뭐 망보 말하나 지라고 워로 가야 마제 버이나 가야라고 말어 아니 니네 미치디 미신다기 미치 말에 수수 미치리 수수 미치 인자 수수 미치 겐디 수수 미치 겐디 수수 쿠고로 수수 겐디 수수 쿠고래 수수 가르 제주 여바이나래 디 제주 여바다 제투바디 제가 누구래 양 상상 가서 근데 연구도 가서 가두이는 저어디 통부를 샤자지시로 내가 통부치 배는 하라 가서 그래 전강기 디 다 가서 그래 운진스라고 그래总经理 디 제루지는 가 지인스 다 월라 디 가서 그래 디 춘유드승의 지임이세서는 딘데 제외이나 디 수수라 니보다 딘데 제나 딘데 제구도무도 딘데 제나 가르핑기도 딜레페나 계자에게 레가지마도 제메버 있는 제샤나 아니 그 나오르기 포디라로 다나신기 계제 내가 집에 가도 수수 기사만 보여 부어라 그래 사제 장마 수는 미 신다기 신라 가고 용그래 수수 수부를 트레이닝 차 그래 아니베 나소긴 잠블린 디나 데네 칼라지 사고래 칼라지 사는 게 인지 키고로 마도 사야다 괜야다 내디 구규에서 아니 제지 지금에서는 디테즈 말해 디디 제고로 겐지 키고로 칼라 사사비지라 인지민진 기 키고로 잠블린 디나
So now this question is about lying flat. So the Chinese translator gave an example. Some people feel, well, if I don't find a good job and I don't make a lot of money, well, what's the point if I just get a job that's not well paid? Well, I might as well not work at all. And Rinpoche's response was, well, even if you just make a little bit of money, well, you still get some money. It's not like you don't get anything. And anyway, sometimes it seems people's expectations are just too high. Well, this is our own life. We have to live our own life. It's not another person's life, but it's our own life. And we have to take responsibility for our own life. So therefore, to have expectations that are too high can just become a problem. For instance, if we are supposed to work in a hotel, but we only want to be the director of the hotel, we don't want to do anything else. Well, that kind of attitude is not the right kind of attitude. It's okay to even work as a sweeper. If we can't get the job as the director, well, to then work as a sweeper. As a sweeper, well, that also has benefits. We get some money. Others will be pleased, will be happy if we clean everything and it looks really nice and tidy, and there's no dust and so forth. On top of that, we get some exercise. We move around. We get some exercise. So there are benefits. We benefit from doing this kind of work, and as members of the human society, well, we eat food. We benefit from the work other people do. So we have a responsibility to contribute in whichever way we can. I mean, we are living in this world, we're using the resources, we're eating food, etc., which is why it's important that we also take responsibility and do something with our lives, contribute to society.
马上
不道德吧？
不道德，公道。我的翻译太重了，应该要说不道德，公道，不是不道德吗？이나 괜찮 소나 포사 콘조 쉔게소 콘조 암조라 저기 돼. 칼라 지사나 양 랭케고리 암조 저기 돼. 那翻译是问说，您说
So the Chinese translator asked, well, do you think it will help young people when they hear you eat the food, you also have to do something? Rinpoche, do you think it will benefit? And Rinpoche says, I don't know. Rinpoche said, I just said what I thought, but I'm not sure it really benefits.
嗯，
你单单卡度的前送的虚伪，
你 say 现在
So I just said that's what what came to mind, and that's what I shared with you.
说卡度的刚刚的几部的，上了蛮大不些，说，浦江人不团上当的，每次以金融给团到上当的，每次拿入了，每次宁不开始，아니你不的结果也开始，卡的钱呢，的拼图继续用个嘞，大拿先给，每次结尾卡多了，刚刚拿出，没参谋了车月吧。강에 채워디 그 미치기 차세지 임바 디 그 미참하기 미치 다랑 임바 디 지용기로 지당기다 내당 가리 임바 디 통고 디 통배 토네 아니 강에지라 강에지 채베 가도 강에지라 따당디 아니 민다오지 야치산이 따토에디 용거리 상고도스
Well, when we really think about it, it's important to reflect on our own life. I mean, to also think of the future, not just to think of what's happening right now, but also in the long term, what's going to happen later on. So to think, what is the essence of our life? What is most important in our life? What's essential? And what is most beneficial? What is it that's most beneficial? Of course, considering that there are different problems, yes, there are going to be problems, but really, what is most important in our life? What makes life worth living? So in that sense, therefore, there are different problems, and that's just part of life. That's just part of living in the existence we live in right now. So understanding that, then we should take it from there. So to have a realistic view with regard to what is important and what is not, and also understand that difficulties are just part of our life.
다 저원 진리지도 개시 다 유진하고도 스러道理 유진하고도 디 이내양 강에 집에 가도 딜러 이내 생기 뉴버디 단돈 당기민도스 랑상다 생기 강에라 가서 좋아 당야디 신체디 쇼추 총동야디 제도 랑상 제도 민도스 디 가도 딜러 간데스 제고 그래스 这时候该怎么办呢？但地卡上需要推上公送是推上公送，道理的，刚研究东亚的特性啊，所讲了需要当，但毕竟难路了，忙不送不提出这的西差别急了，那西送是下下呢，推不当上不几不讲了下下吧嘞，但的评个嘛嘞，的评个公不长嘛送公不，但。디 양내 양도 공신 디버지니 디 종들지니 디 수수기 냥뇨인 버지 수고 수수기 냥뇨인 버지 수자손 아니 강에지 테디 랑상 상담에 있는 랑상고 요동 퇴시 용그리스
Now the question here is, someone is asking, well, I understand the reasons. I know why I should why it makes sense to deal with problems and so forth, but still when problems arise, I have a hard time working with them. I have a hard time facing them and solving them. So my mental capacity is just not, it doesn't suffice. I don't have enough mental strength to be able to overcome problems. So I don't know what to do. And Rinpoche's response was, well, yesterday Rinpoche said he spoke about the 3 stages, the 3 kind of activities of listening or learning, of reflecting, and of meditating. So these 3, and all 3 are important. So here in the case of the person asking the question, there's one missing.
我们应该如何在立媒传承？立媒传承，立媒传承，立媒是哪个来的？
立媒，立苏马切。
안에 디 벽에 디 제인당의 지진도 리미.
지.
그래서 참 无执着无过犯的修持上师前进行。大概是新加面吧当만으로의 돈에 신이 띵수 간데스 제고레스 되는다고 지스겠어래 신이 만으로의 돈이 신자 매바당 아니 니바 만으로 있으라 그랬다 니바 미사베 돈이 신이 띵수디 신이라 대바디 간데스 줄을 집어 제고레스 일단 리메기 추주 이 라미 라마초라 어디 송고 하르베
So the question here is, how should we practice guru devotion without attachment and fold in the Rime tradition?
无过犯만으로의 돈이 쓴 데가 왔다 만으로의 돈이 신이 딘수 신이를 대바디 간데스 장고레스 디레베 된다.
Is that the question? So Rinpoche read the question in Chinese and asked whether that's the question. So how should we practice guru devotion without attachment and fold in the Rime tradition?
리메기 최규인의 고추이미로 대차디르베 배차상 계시가 단나 기로바 이마 이내양 아니 가규 길라마 체베갑소 가 이셈양 야버지 라마 규샤 체토바 기차디 제베
대고 간데스 제고레세 시르 딘다고 진서리.
So how to rely on the Lama, for instance, of a different tradition, such as the Kagyu tradition.
다 세다 신이의 덴베 라마 추의 튠베 게신이 강도 슈버 이날에 쿠난추 디로왔다 추의 튠베 지난 거래 아니 신이의 덴바 임바 인디간라 간송야 디 상제기 덴바다 신진의 펜버 지난 거래 다디 디난디간라 주신 디장라 디네 구버를 유바라 하장그 구버를 유바래 그래서 디장리 디마도 수수기 라마라 다기 슈바나신 구셰제디 네 라마 인상 안수이 라마 인상 아니 대바지기도 슬라버 있는 랑쇼 주신데 제네 가부 제바 장리 디 대바랑 차그 말해서 랑쇼 주신데 제네 가부 제디 신자양 지에기 ninga 요로 안수이 라마 인상 가부 유슬라버 있는 디 뇌자던 지디에기 ninga 친구도 가서 하나는 지디 거다.
Anyway, to continue with the answer from the previous question, so here the person stopped at just learning and reflecting. That's not enough. We need to familiarize. So familiarize with the different reasons that are given with regard to facing a problem, for instance. So really internalize them and make them part of our own experience. If we can do that, then we can really change. So it's important to apply all three. So learning, reflecting, and meditating. As to the question that was just asked about the Lama, well, we have faith and devotion in the Lama when they're qualified, when they act in accordance with the Dharma, when what they do, what they say benefits sentient beings. So we should then, that's appropriate to have respect and devotion for such a Lama, no matter what tradition they're from. But if we're just like our Lama, because they're part of our tradition, if we have the sense our Lama, we should have only faith and devotion, or we should follow our Lama, that is more like liking the Lama, and it's mixed with attachment. So it's not just pure devotion and faith because they work for the benefit of other sentient beings, but it's the sense of they're our Lama, that's our Lama, and it's less faith but more a liking. And as just said, it's mixed with attachment. There's definitely attachment involved. So it's not the right kind of attitude. The right kind of attitude towards a Lama is to have faith and devotion because of what they do, of what they teach, and how they benefit sentient beings.
시다디가 차상이 낭취를 차상이 로종치 컨테스트 제고래 세시다 낭취 당부 장이 수기 레 당부 버츠 디네 아니 니마다버시다 레가 유디간라 레가 더 레게 뒤주 디기 가소리 디레 수도 뒤주 린동 가주지 낭주 장의 야그레세 디스게서 아니 다 니만 다버시 다 캔리 제기 칸된디 还是完成明天的안에年度人的가스요哪个地区的记了学习佛法比较好，还是只完成的？哪个地区记了能去讲你啊？这边阳明呢，你们大不了是肯定去出个地区，基本上的下能这个热些去，中心应该啊，他走的开始见的啊个热些，我顶着不去，热下。但等到第第二他讲了，老兄简单的俺说大概了，应该他吃上去过年，但不你呢送的。也给上届的股票嘛，都把这两届人把掐上去，的企业的截图呢也会有的。两人大部经过做呢，基本全部呢送的两届人把掐上去企业截图呢，的的南路了呀，人把掐上去这也有的。但那个的记了，的确搞出原因的，老兄的结果了，老兄嘛就看见基本上能当个嘛了，就说。的确有的老兄去，你看断的去，看断去可能老兄的，他老兄的看断你不得看个嘛当不去，老兄去看断几个，看断几个囊断的了老兄去呢也不多，看断囊路了老兄去忙不了的呢，真的，加上看断加上老兄去的，先生看断几个老兄，看断结不的老兄结不的看断，不你叔里面个截图呢也不多，走的看个下过是呢。新军队的讲下过去的，新军队的，哪去讲义呢？
So the question here is for a beginner who wants to study systematically, how should I study? How much time should I arrange to study Buddhism outside of work every day? Or is it enough to just fulfill my daily vows, the daily vows? Where should the focus be placed? And Rinpoche said, well, of course, study is important. We should study the Dharma. So starting with the true truth and then the Four Noble Truths and so forth, all the way up to the enlightenment of a Buddha. We should learn about this, or to follow the Lamrim, the practices common to a person of lower spiritual capacity and so forth. So study is very important. It's not enough to just say prayers. But actually, what we also need to understand that our study are our prayers and our prayers are our study. So in other words, the meaning of the prayers, we should study those. And our study should be that which we think about, which we reflect upon in the same way as we would when we recite a prayer, which is why our prayers become our study and our study become our prayers. However, the main purpose of our Dharma practice is to subdue our own mind. That's the main purpose of practicing the Dharma, to tame or to subdue our own mind. So those are all the questions. We've got all the questions. Rinpoche answered all the questions.
这个问题到就要走什么吧？
那么公就只要走，那么公就看得了我这个钱了。公就钱只要走死呢，但只要没都人呢。
So anyway, no more questions.
没有问题了。特别好，没有别的问题了。但你但是第下一，但起码给真的储备卡多了，还是我是也用是。你但俺让给第三南路了的看到去大的南新去，年个人能真的提到的大的南新，什么用到钱给托呢？当多给些忙些呢，什么略就速度为呢？的被拼出全部来上这一都是。
So Rinpoche says, well, I see you again later when we continue with these kind of classes. But for the time being, Rinpoche feels it's most beneficial to continue with the style of teaching that Rinpoche has adopted for now, in the sense of how can we train our mind to become calmer, to learn how to become calmer, to become more relaxed. So teachings that help us to train our mind in such a way, Rinpoche feels that would be most beneficial for the time being.
他只要去列数，他只要心淡不过去，只要去列问题了，连接去。
来了一个问
So there
题，
are
那
more-
别的问题我们不谈，就处理这
More
个已经来
questions,
的
but we
问
don't need
题
to。answer
嗯，
more.
所以我们没有自信，
Oh.
或者说自由意志。无法决定自己可以离开这场地球人类游戏，对吗？那看死我了。不得要追问的，但让心没吧，俺说的让心要嘛的是阳明呢，让完点呗，告诉我的都是意志思维呢，上路思维呗，是吧？自由意志思维，你讲那让完给上路思维。
让王，印
让
象
给去让他让这些推给上路的，没把这边是，但 的俺做个看的嘞，但这个卡说没记住的嘞怕，他推下的，头些要嘛的边是，这顶着我是个是的，但比如啊，让心没把这是让顶进这完全啊这是个的，对你除非你在让心没把这是个，现在对你下过的，对你下过的讲了，平时对你下过是的讲过下过了，过月把的。平时店呢，记了几点给托呢，等这去处用过的，这不去处用过的，就去利用过的，就这个人把的过退吧的，现在地有的，看书的，的让他让这钱给上路的有的，让他让这钱有的，考了他也有的，没记住了，他是老的讲他当个的，别呢，要么被喜欢了怕他是的过的的，哪怕上级被。考他是的，牛毛被青蛙的他是国家的嘛都，啥家的下呢？啥家现在就能赚了，考了他是嘛的，那么上届被考了他当的定的人，上届中的大百姓讲了有的嘛，没技术能用过的，马他了嘛了，他差不了，啥家现在就能赚了，他嘛他给些行嘛的，
This question seems to be about freedom versus
需要的，让没技术呢嘛配些些能赚点钱个配过的，第一的讲了，给些他的嘛他说的没技术的呢怕啥大人不进了多个月呢，那上届出了永远没过了，的用过了，就是他的嘛他说的，啥家今年啥家现在就能赚了贵嘛的是，现在拿了牛毛没不算那他了。
Now, the question seems to be about lack of inherent existence on one hand, and also freedom. So, or independence, in the sense of like, well, Rinpoche said, like, independence, of course, is impossible because everything is dependent on other phenomena. So that's not a possibility. So this kind of independence doesn't work because phenomena lack inherent existence. But anyway, despite that, it is possible to attain a result. So it's in dependence on certain causes and conditions, we can attain a certain result. So here, we want to attain the result of freedom from the afflictions, which basically means we're no longer controlled by the afflictions. That is the kind of freedom we talk about here. So it's not a sense of independence as such, but it's more like a state of being free from the control of the afflictions. And that's what freedom here means. It's not a place. So freedom or liberation here is not a place that we want to go to, we want to reach, but rather it's an internal state. It's an internal state. So therefore, the fact that the Buddha came to us is the Buddha came to us in the sense that the Buddha stayed among us, is that it's only possible because the Buddha didn't have to go to a faraway place. If he had to go to a faraway place to become liberate, to become enlightened, he wouldn't have been able to stay among us. But it's just a mental state. It's not a place. So having reached enlightenment, having reached liberation and so forth. So these states are just of a mental quality. And they're not a particular geographical place. They're not really a place where you can go to, which is why the Buddha really is, in terms of his mental states, is like in a pure realm, but physically he stayed among us. He stayed in this world with us. So that's the meaning here of freedom. So not freedom in the sense of independence. Still phenomena are dependent, but freedom in the sense of freedom from the afflictions in our own mind. So having overcome these. Okay, so that's it. We completed the class, and now Rinpoche will recite some dedication prayers.
Shebeside badu tinjuru ji shanju sinju rinpoche ma ji bana ji juru ji jiwa nyamba mema konen kondo pewa jo pama sinju tanje dida tinjuru ji ngindu tanje tata don shanju simba kano su shuwa tida gunje melan ru juru ji 谢谢大家，苍茫突击期。